All right, good evening. We're going to go ahead and call to order the Bristol, Virginia City Council for March 10th, 2020. Please join me in a moment of silence. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, well, thank you all for coming out. We've got a good crowd, and I'm glad to see everyone here. Do we have any council comments?
I would like to make note that Officer Eddie Odell retired from the police department after 27 years, and during the last few years he had been a resource officer at the middle school and then at Highland View. So I appreciate his many years of service to the city and wish him very much a very happy retirement.
All right, thank you. The only thing I'd like to say, a few days ago we were notified that Brian Boyd, who's one of our firefighters, was appointed to a state board by the governor, and so I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do and to help with his leadership across the state too. So I'm excited about that. Congratulations to him. City manager's comments.
Council, members of the public, as everybody has been aware for the past month or so, there's been a virus that infected, initially started in China and has continually spread across the world. And since it has entered the United States, here at the city, we have been developing plans on how to deal with that situation in the event that it hits here in the city of Bristol. So over the past 2 weeks, I've met with department heads, I've met with Ballot Health, I've met with Virginia Department of Health, had telephone conferences with CDC officials, and we are taking all their recommendations seriously when it comes to trying to prevent the spread of the virus. So with that being said, all department heads have been developing plans on how to operate with reduced staff, and also how to continue to provide the services that we normally do, even with reduced staff. That's not to say if we do have a number of employees that are impacted that the normal services may be curtailed a little bit for a short period of time, but we will resume normal operations as soon as possible. I would encourage anyone that has questions about the coronavirus to reach out to reputable agencies throughout the state, whether it's Virginia Department of Health, Tennessee Department of Health, the CDC, or your local healthcare provider to determine if you have any of the symptoms that may be part of the coronavirus. If the virus hits here in Bristol, we will implement the plans that we are preparing. We'll tweak those as necessary in order to continue to provide those services. This is a situation that we must be aware of. We must plan for the worst and hope for the best. I don't anticipate us having any serious issues, even though we've just learned within the past hour there is a confirmed case in Sullivan County at this time, and it's my understanding that that person was doing some international travel. So please just be mindful, wash your hands, use normal hygiene, or maybe more hygiene than we typically do, in order to prevent spreading the disease or even catching the disease.
All right, thank you very much. Matters to be presented by the public, non-agenda items. We have 2 people who have signed up. First person is Chandler Bowman.
What I would like to speak to you about, it's about the public school budget, but there was no place to sign up for it on the sheet, so would it be okay if I spoke now or wait until
Perfectly
that
fine.
All right. Hello, my name is Chandler Bowman, and I am a senior at Virginia High School. Tonight, I wish to speak about my personal concerns for the future of Bristol, Virginia public schools, mainly with the city contribution to the school system. On average, since 2011, the city of Bristol, Virginia has given $9.3 million to the school system, some years slightly more and some years significantly less. However, this average is not enough for our school system to succeed. As you know, the biggest impact comes from the funding of local sources, such as local leaders and governments such as Bristol, Virginia. These sources have the ability to witness the positive impact the school system has on the area and those who attend it every day. Adjusted for inflation, that $9.3 million over the past decade equates to roughly $10.7 million today. While this is not nearly enough for our school system to function fully still, This shows that the local government at least has a remote interest in making sure the financial contribution it gives is viable for the school system as a whole. For this, I pose a personal question. Does your budget look the same as how it did in 2011, or did you have to adjust for your budget for the effects of inflation? I implore you, show the families of BVPS that you care about their education and put our future first as we lead this city back to success. Support education by your actions because they speak much louder than your words can. And it is our actions now that matter, not your words. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, next person is Nancy Marney.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, my name is Nancy Marney. I live at 526 Euclid Avenue. I'm a property owner. I pay my taxes. I am a resident of the city. The devil is in the detail. The devil is in the detail. Be very, very cautious and very aware of false assumptions. Gentlemen, this city has been in a catastrophic financial situation for several years. We are still in it. However, we are better. We have made some progress. But one misstep will put us back very, very deeply. I think one of the things we need to remember today, and it ties in with what the city manager has just said, we are in a very difficult time. We're in a very volatile situation. We're in a situation that is uncertain, both in our city, our state, our nation, and this world. Now, we are in a situation where we cannot gamble. We cannot. We don't have the money to gamble. We're not Darien, Connecticut, Grosse Pointe, Michigan, or Palm Beach. The world situation is so volatile and so changing. We don't know for sure what we have, how much of it, where it's headed, how long it's going to last. But what we do know is we will be affected by this situation. Now, in view of this, I think that we're going to have to take a very strong look at, the fact that, yes, there are things we'd like to do. There's money we would like to share with other people and other entities, but we don't have that privilege. We simply do not have it. What we have is the will to try to survive as a city. That's what we've got. Now, in my opinion, in this world of uncertainty, volatility, everything that will affect us, we can't count on anything this night, nothing. But in this world that we are in, there is one thing that is certain that we do know, and that one thing is that if we take money we have and put it into the reserve fund and pay the debt, we know that money is safe. Mr. Mayor, may I have another minute? Thank you, sir. We do know that in this world of uncertainty and volatility, we can be safe by putting money into the reserve fund and by paying the debt. We are required as a city, we are required by law to pay our debt. We are required by law. That isn't a choice. Now, if we put that money into the only safe place we can think of, no matter what happens, no matter what comes down the road, we will be affected, but we will not be destroyed because we have money in that security fund and we are making our debt payments. So my advice to you is, as stewards of this city, and that's what you are the stewards of this city, follow the course that the previous council gave us. It has worked, it is working, it will work. Stay the course. Stay the course. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Item D is adoption of the agenda. Do we have any changes we want to propose?
I'd move that we swap items number 1 and 2, move the joint public hearing to item 1 and the proclamation to item 2, and also to remove item E, closed session.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the agenda with the changes that we swap item 2 with item 1 and remove the closed session from item E.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion from the Vice Mayor and a second from Mr. Farnum. Please call the roll.
Farnum.
Yes.
Mumpower.
Yes.
Wingard.
Yes.
Hartley.
Yes.
Osborne.
Yes. All right, first item is joint public hearing on special exception number 1-2020 application for transitional housing at 617 Moore Street. This is a joint public hearing, so I'll open the public hearing for the council, and if the Planning Commission chairman could do the same.
I call this meeting of the Bristol, Virginia Planning Commission to order.
Thank you. Staff report.
Mayor and council members and chairman and planning commission members, you have before you special request number 01-2020, which is an application involving 617 Moore Street and the tax map there on the screen. The applicant is Haven of Rest Rescue Mission, and the owner of the property is Bristol Redevelopment and Housing Authority. I think they are both here in attendance at the public hearing. The proposed use is a sober living transitional home. The Planning Commission had this on their agenda, reviewed it at their last meeting, and passed it on to this next step, which is the joint public hearing. And then at the end, I will tell you what the steps are afterwards. But the current zoning of this lot is R3, which is moderate density, multifamily residential. You can see in the map that all the orange color is R3, so it's pretty much in the middle. It's on the 600 block of Moore Street, just a few blocks away from City Hall here. The past use of this property, it was student housing for Virginia Intermont. Not sure the time period that it existed for that use, but it was sold in 2013 to the Housing Authority, and it was occupied by tenants that they had. There were at least 6 apartments in this formerly, I guess, single-family building when it was originally built. Much like a lot of the homes in the nearby neighborhood, these older single-family homes, many of them have been converted years ago into apartments. The applicant, the Haven of Rest, operates, as you well know, a homeless shelter in Tennessee, but they also operate a program called the Lighthouse Program, and it has been successful as a transitional type of housing program to help those folks who have been incarcerated to get back on their feet again with supervision and counseling and help. But the residents that go there, that are accepted into that program, that are from Virginia, can only stay there 45 days. So they are interested in having a location in Virginia where Virginia residents can stay longer than 45 days. So just a little bit more about what a transitional home is. It provides temporary housing for people who are on probation following incarceration. It provides a supportive and supervised environment to give residents the best opportunity to succeed and reduce recidivism. Meals are provided in addition to financial classes, mentoring, access to medical care, including mental health care, and spiritual counseling. The proposed occupancy of this project program is 6 to 7 residents in the house with 1 full-time staff supervisor to control and monitor all activities. The house will have a surveillance system and curfews enforced, and it will be alarmed as far as in and out between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. Another thing to note is because of the type of use that it will be converting to under the state building code, it is a designation called R4, not to be confused with their zoning designation, but it's a building code, and requires that they have an architect and that they address life safety with the fire suppression system. So they are in the process of doing that and looking into that. As far as the requirements of residents, according to the Haven of Rest, this is the information that's been provided, and you all had that in your packet as well, I believe. Some of the questions that were addressed by their responses to us. The residents go through a process to qualify for the program. They must have employment. They must have an established track record of sobriety and responsible behavior. No sex offenders or violent offenders are accepted, and no juveniles. They have a zero tolerance policy on alcohol and drug testing. It requires a commitment of these folks to the program 6 to 18 months, so the maximum they could stay is 18 months. They have a strict financial guidelines that have to be followed on where their money that they earn goes to, and much of it going into savings so that they can afford their own housing when their period of transition is over. And they have strict morning and evening roll calls. Why is the special exception required? Our permitted uses in R3 are listed here. Single-family and two-family residential, moderate density apartments, depending on the amount of space and the tract of land, and townhouses, child care centers, daycare centers for adults, group homes, and in our code, city code, those are defined as child caring institutions, not adults. Home for adults is defined in our code as residence housing disabled adults. So none of those quite are what this is being proposed, so that's why the reason for the special exception, which in city code is an avenue for someone to apply for something that is not normally permitted in that zone. Just a quick process, joint public hearing as we are having now. They were required notices in the paper, 2 notices over 2 weeks. Certified letters were sent to all adjoining property owners. I will be giving the staff report, finalizing it, and giving it to the Planning Commission before their meeting next week. And we do have to go through 8 criteria as per Section 50-39. That meeting next week, the Planning Commission, is March 16th, and then hopefully they will have a recommendation to grant or deny back to you all for your next meeting. And just a note that conditions can be placed on special exceptions. So that is a report, and I don't know if there was a sign-up sheet or...
There was. We have, thank you for that. We have one person who signed up for comment on it, and that's Ms. Marnie.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, my name is Nancy Marnie. I'm a resident of the city of Bristol, Virginia. I'm a property owner. I pay my tax. As a former member of the Planning Commission, I often look at things differently. Well, that's one reason why. I look at things differently, and I have questions that may not come up from other people. Now, I'm not exactly sure where on Moore Street this house is, but this is leading me to my question. What's going to happen at VI College? What is the thinking at this particular time for that area? Now, I have sat here and chewed my tongue bloody raw more than once, watching councils change zoning. And it's a colossal mistake if it's done wrong. It is absolutely colossal. Because if it is done wrong, it will keep anything desirable from attracting. This has happened all over Bristol. This is one of the reasons we're in such a mess. We put people off and we put things off. It's green. If you're tapping at me, don't.
Go ahead.
But if we put things in the wrong places, it is very off-putting. Who do you think is going to follow a tattoo parlor up there at the falls? I can't think of anybody with any sense. That's only a lame example. But my point is this. I'm not sure where on Moore Street this is. I don't know what VI College is going to do because they are the biggest neighbor in the neighborhood up there. And the city of Bristol, Virginia is the biggest neighbor all around it. And then the people who have invested their money in that property may say, hey, wait a minute. Now, if you put that up there, that means you have totally wiped out the value of my investment. Well, we certainly don't want that unless it's a bad investment. So I need to know more. And did you say this will come up again in 2 weeks? Or did you say that?
No, it goes to, the next step, it goes to the Planning Commission meeting for their recommendation.
And is that next week?
Next week, at the Planning
And then
Commission,
when does it come back here?
the 24th, assuming they.
Okay, well,
yeah.
that's what I wondered, because I need to look into this a little more, but I'm very, very concerned about putting the wrong thing in the wrong place, because you may destroy that for anything good that could come. We've got that all over the city. I've got a zoning map at home. I know what the city looks like. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. All right, next item. Oh, no, let's see. We're going to go ahead and close the public hearing, and the Planning Commission would do the same.
As a point of clarification, do we need to wait until our next meeting to ask any questions that we would have concerning this?
That would be,
So this is strictly for the public hearing?
yes. And
Okay.
the applicant will be at the next meeting if you need to ask questions.
Okay. In that case, I hereby close the Bristol, Virginia Planning Commission portion of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next is a proclamation recognizing Navy Week. Staff report.
As most of you have heard, the United States Navy will be here the week of March 30th through April the 5th for Navy Week, and that is for the, one is in part to promote the United States Navy, but two, it's also as part of a joint venture with the Bristol Motor Speedway. They will be doing a lot of exercises at the Bristol Motor Speedway. They'll also be visiting a lot of local schools to tell the benefits of joining the Navy and serving in our armed forces. This proclamation is a joint proclamation with the city of Bristol, Tennessee, as we welcome the United States Navy to the cities of Bristol.
All right, thank you very much. No one signed up for public comments, so reading of the proclamation. I'll go ahead and read it. Whereas the cities of Bristol, Tennessee and Bristol, Virginia are honored to have the presence of the United States Navy in our community, and whereas the state of Tennessee is home for more than 5,000 active duty enlisted sailors, 1,000 active duty naval officers, and more than 1,200 Navy residents, and more than 12,000 active duty and reserve retirees. And whereas the United States Navy is instrumental in ensuring the safety and security of $32.7 billion in annual exports from the state of Tennessee, and whereas the citizens of Bristol take great pride in supporting our namesake submarines, the USS Tennessee and USS Greenville. And whereas the inaugural Tri-Cities Navy Week hosts special events and programs in the Tri-Cities to increase the community's knowledge and understanding of their Navy and its global mission. And whereas Navy Week includes several public events, including free concerts by Navy Band Southeast, and whereas Navy Week will culminate with multiple units supporting Spring Race Week at the Bristol Motor Speedway, now, therefore, we, Margaret Firerobin and Neil Osborne, the mayors of Bristol, Tennessee, and Virginia, do hereby proclaim March 30th through April 5th, 2020 as United States Navy Week in the cities of Bristol, Tennessee, and Virginia, and encourage all citizens to support the military. All right, so I'm looking for a motion and a second.
I move we approve the proclamation.
Second.
So a motion from Mr. Farnum and second from Mr. Mumpower. Please call the roll.
Farnum.
Yes.
Mumpower.
Yes.
Wingard.
Yes.
Hartley.
Yes.
Osborne.
Yes, and I'll say no one is here to receive the proclamation right now, but we will be presenting it jointly with the Bristol, Tennessee Council on April the 2nd to a representative from the Navy, so please look out for more information about that and come out for that. Next item is a public hearing on the sale of city-owned property, and I will go ahead and open the public hearing. Staff report.
Council, this property that has been advertised for sale on February the 24th and March the 2nd of 2020, it is the parking lot that is adjacent to Studio Brew, immediately to the east of Studio Brew. It would it would not take the entire parking lot between the school board and Studio Brew. It would take over to the sidewalk that separates the school board and Studio Brew. For a period of time, I believe there was a misunderstanding between at least one party that Studio Brew owned that parking lot, when in actuality there was just an agreement that Studio Brew would have access to that parking lot while they were in operation. As everyone knows, Studio Brew was sold back in December to a couple of investors here in the city, and they do plan on making use of that building with a potential restaurant and some other amenities as well, and they do need that parking for the events that they want to have at that facility.
All right, thank you very much. No one signed up for public comment, so I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. On to item 4 is presentation of outside agency budget requests for fiscal year 2021. Staff report.
Council, as the mayor just stated, we will start with outside agency requests. Tonight we have Believe in Bristol and Birthplace of Country Music here to present. We also have the Bristol, Virginia Public School System present as well. On Friday at noon, during a called meeting, we will be meeting with Discover Bristol for a presentation for their budget as well. So we'll go ahead and begin this presentation with Believe in Bristol.
Alrighty. Thank you all so much for having me here today. I'm Maggie Elliott, and I am the Executive Director for Believe in Bristol. Why does Believe in Bristol exist, first and foremost? Believe in Bristol's mission is to foster the collaborative, vibrant nature of both Bristols by building a community of culture, lifestyle, heritage, music, and economy. Believe in Bristol strives to strengthen the heart and soul of our historic downtown and facilitate its future growth. Bristol is one community whose heart is a vibrant downtown, where our unique cultural and historical heritage is celebrated, where a sustainable, vigorous economy is enjoyed, and where the quality of life is enhanced by abundant opportunities of living, working, shopping, and playing. What do you know us for? There. Well, first off, we were a recipient of the American Planning Association Great Places in America Award. State Street was recognized as one of the 2018 great streets in the nation. You also know us from some of our regular favorites, of course, including Border Bash Summer Concert Series, State Street Trick or Treating, Small Business Saturday, Christmas Open House, Christmas Tree Lighting, and Journey's End. We also assist with and coordinate our own merchant meetings, guide property owners through historic preservation best practices and financial resources, cultivate creativity through the Arts and Entertainment District, host loft tours, and one of our favorites, host the Entrepreneur Grant Competition, which we have just completed the 6th installment of. Our most recent recipient was Bristol Academy of Music, located on Piedmont Avenue in Bristol, Virginia. This is all just to name a few that is produced via one full-time employee and one part-time employee. No one in this room is new to the story of downtown Bristol's history. At one glance downtown State Street, you can see the progress that has been made for decades. But I want to talk more about why it's important to maintain that progress. In your packet, you have a one-pager on why Main Streets matter, which I pulled directly from National Main Street, and would like to go through some of those important points and what they mean for Bristol. Main Street is the historic core of our community. Its buildings embody the community's past and its visual identity. A historic commercial district is often a major tourist attraction. When people travel or shop, they want to see unique places, especially ones that offer a unique shopping experience. What more of an experience can you get than being in historic downtown Bristol? Being in two places at once, experiencing what Southern hospitality truly looks like. A vital Main Street area reduces sprawl by concentrating retail in one area and uses community resources wisely, such as infrastructure, tax dollars, and land. Downtown commercial districts are prominent employment centers. Downtown Bristol is a great example of that, with 170 businesses and over 1,100 full-time employees. A traditional commercial district is an ideal location for independent businesses to locate, and downtown Bristol is no different. In turn, these local independent businesses support other local businesses and services, supports local families with family-owned businesses, supports local community projects, and provide an extremely stable economic foundation. It's its own circle of life. The Main Street District represents a significant portion of the community's tax base. This is my personal favorite slide. If the district declines, property values drop, placing more of a tax burden on other parts of town. In 2019, you can see the local impact we have here. The real estate assessment just for the Virginia side of downtown and just within downtown is currently approximately $25 million. $365,000 was collected in restaurant and food tax by the city in 2019, and lodging tax just within downtown brought in over $100,000, a figure that we know will go up this current calendar year with the Sessions Hotel opening soon. And admissions tax collected by the city was over $50,000 last year. We cannot take away investments or lose focus on what's bringing in return for our community, a known financial generator for our cities. A healthy Main Street core protects property values in surrounding residential neighborhoods, and Main Street provides an important civic forum where members of the community can congregate. Parades, special events, and celebrations help to reinforce an intangible sense of community. In 2019, Bristol was named one of the 50 most charming small towns in America by the Travel Channel. Just a few months before that, we were named the best small town in Virginia by the Discoverer. Would we have been named those things without downtown Bristol? The commercial district represents a huge public and private investment. Since 2006, we have seen $16 million in public investment and nearly $50 million in private investment. Just in 2019, $700,000 in public investment from both of our cities was leveraged against $3 million in private investment. That's a lot of money being poured into one location. People care about downtown that much to put not only their dreams, but their assets in downtown Bristol. We are fortunate enough to help steward a number of new businesses into downtown each year. We have received wonderful endorsements from downtown businesses like Kelly Crow from Tri-Cities Escape Game. Without a doubt, Believe in Bristol was a deciding factor in our decision to put the Tri-Cities Escape Game in Bristol. The education via the Believe in Bristol website and the encouragement via the Believe in Bristol team members gave us the foundation we needed to invest everything in Bristol. And if that's not enough, the continued support and opportunity for mentored business growth has been incredible. Kudos to Bristol for the foresight to create such an organization to promote downtown growth. The Main Street approach consists of 4 points. We have observed these points since we became a duly accredited Main Street program. Organization involves creating a strong foundation for a sustainable revitalization effort, including cultivating partnerships, community involvement, and resources for the district. Economic vitality focuses on capital, incentives, and other economic and financial tools to assist new and existing businesses, catalyze property development, and create a supportive environment for entrepreneurs and innovators that drive local economies. Design supports a community's transformation by enhancing the physical and visual assets that set the commercial district apart. And promotion positions the downtown or commercial district as the center of the community and hub of economic activity, while creating a positive image that showcases a community's unique characteristics. As a duly accredited Main Street program, we receive services through our state coordinating programs, as well as National Main Street. Services from National Main Street include strategic planning through transformation strategies, Transformation strategies are a tool for Main Street organizations to strengthen revitalization efforts and articulate a direct path. It is designed for Main Street organizations to stay focused and are determined based off of market data and community engagement. After a full market analysis, National Main Street recommended 2 strategies for Bristol: arts and entertainment with a focus on performance arts and music, and food experience with a focus on to bring even more diversity to our eclectic restaurant selection. Our organization recognizes that not everything in our work plans or daily tasks will fall into these nice little categories. And we have still been able to implement a facade improvement program, our entrepreneur grant competition. We hope to bring a downtown cleanup to the spring, enhance activity on First Fridays, and many more new things to downtown. However, our transformation strategies are in place to keep us focused on the mission. This allows us to say no to things and not accept everything that might fall on our doorsteps or put our organization in financial jeopardy. As expectations rise from both cities, so does the cost of sustainability. Because Believe in Bristol is known for producing quality programs and special events, are reliable and fiscally responsible, and naturally because downtown is the community space in which we gather, we become that go-to resource for the cities to come when that planning or legwork is needed. We're looking at that right now in September 2020. We take those additional responsibilities on with community pride as we rally our volunteers. Our organization alone has brought in a value of over $1 million to the community just in volunteer hours. This does not include Birthplace of Country Music's Rhythm and Roots or BMS race weeks. Our organization must receive support from the City of Bristol, Virginia to survive. We are working every day towards getting our organization to a more sustainable state and to not be as reliant on our city's financial support. We understand the financial challenges the city has faced in the past and uncertainties of the future, but we have to invest in what is working in Bristol, and downtown is working. People are moving here because they are falling in love with downtown Bristol. We cannot lose that momentum. In summary, a few key takeaways. Believe in Bristol has increased the tax base, partnered to create and increase tourism, increased property values, increased the number of jobs, provided and encouraged positive perception of downtown and community, improved relations with local government and the private sector, increased the volunteer base for the cities, created a business-friendly environment in downtown Bristol, and produced quality programs and special events for downtown businesses and locals. In summary, we get things done. The Walker Collaborative assessed all of downtown Bristol during the Bristol Development Strategy at the end of 2018, and I'll leave you with a note from their report. In addition to the need for BIB to support downtown, the community needs to support BIB. It is critical that BIB focus most of its attention on proactive measures to enhance downtown as opposed to the time-consuming distractions of raising its own funds. In addition to getting sufficient and regular annual funding from the 2 city governments, a foundation should be created to financially support BIB and other downtown initiatives. Thank you so much for your time.
All right, thank you. And if you got a few minutes, we're going to open it up for questions.
Okay.
So do we have any questions?
I don't have any questions, but just a comment. I absolutely agree with you about how important downtown Bristol is. Growing up here, I remember when I was a little kid, we really didn't go to downtown because there wasn't a whole lot to do. And that's changed a lot over the past couple decades. You know, I've worked with people who don't live here, and I take them downtown, and they're just amazed at the music, the nightlife, the places to shop, the places to eat. So we have something special. We really do. So we appreciate the work that you guys do.
Thank you.
Hey Maggie, I had a question. I think in the summertime and in the good weather times, we do a really good job. You know, there's a lot of activity downtown. You have the farmers market, the border bashes, and all. And you know, I sent you a couple of emails. What we're trying to do is trying to figure out how to prop up the kind of the winter months, right?
Absolutely.
The November, December, the January. So, can you speak to any thoughts or plans or things you might be looking to do, maybe in the November, December, you know, around Christmas, to where we could get more activity there to help tourism?
Yeah, absolutely. We've actually had current conversations about our existing holiday events, and ways to maybe improve our attendance for those. That might look like combining events or adding additional elements to it. People love the horse and carriage rides. We'd love to provide those more than just one night for the Christmas open house. We were looking at maybe doing a winter time for that, like a Valentine's Day special treat in that sense. But also increasing the existing assets we already have. So with the transformation strategies, the food experience was really eye-opening for us, and the things that we can do as far as mini festivals go for that. So as the weather gets colder, things that we can do, we did a mini pepper fest we tried last year. We're looking to be able to expand that this year, and other areas of our arts and entertainment that we can expand off of. The first Fridays are our hope to be able to increase that activity during those winter months, because those are definitely the hardest. I mean, if you're at the mercy of Mother Nature, even in the summertime, we run into those issues.
Yeah, but I think even if it snows, even if it's cold, people are pretty, they're pretty durable. They'll come out if the music's right,
Yeah.
if the hot chocolate's right, and that's the kind of stuff a lot of people are saying that they'd like to see a little bit around the Christmas lighting tree, but that whole, 2 to 3 weeks, leading up to Christmas, if we could do something different to, bring the park alive down there with some music and outdoor stuff, I think it would go a long way of, creating the excitement of the wintertime when it's kind of dull, right? And get some
I
more
agree.
people downtown. And
Let's
the
do
hotel
it.
down there needs it. You get this, hotel next door, then I'm sure every new activity we can come up with, right, would help their clientele. So maybe talk to
Absolutely.
them and get some ideas from their staff, what they would like to see.
Definitely, thank you.
I think one thing that I went through your packet up here, and one thing that I like, you've kind of done in the past couple of years, you've done some stuff that's outside of the box as far as getting people downtown, like the Wing War and the Tattoo Festival, and then, hello, and then the Push Film Festival, which I think has been a big success. I know it's been going on for a few years now, and I knew some people who were involved in the initial setup to that. So one thing that I wanted to ask you about that I don't know if you touched on it, what I found in here is this Public Arts Task Force. So what does that entail, and do you have any specific plans you're thinking about doing with that?
Yeah, so that's actually a subcommittee off of our existing promotions committee, and what we found was the workload for promotions was a little high, and so we needed to pull those special initiatives. We played around with doing some creative placemaking with some fairy doors a couple years ago. That was our first little dabble into public art in a long while, so we dip our little toe in there. But we're currently looking at some more murals downtown, looking for ideal placements for those, not gigantic things, but being very strategic about picture-worthy things. We see plenty of the angel wings in Nashville, and people are doing it for the gram, so that's our mindset as far as our murals go, and working off of those, and doing other creative placemaking things, more family-friendly activities, like the fairy doors, and enhancing our existing public art. So those are the working orders for the Public Art Task Force as of now.
I think the other thing that's really good in here that you highlighted is the new businesses you helped get going and the amount of jobs that's created. Because we have, I think you said, over 1,000 people who work, connected to downtown.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a big economic generator if you can create new jobs. And thank you all for your work with people trying to help them get stuff going.
Well,
down there.
thanks.
It's
We
hard to do with
understand
small
that
business.
it's a little confusing, with having two municipalities and which side of the state line works best for your business type and where to even begin. And so we're
correct answer,
happy to be
Virginia.
that middle. Yeah, of
Virginia.
course. Yes, of course.
I'll just say, I appreciate the work that you do, and most people don't realize it, but as you pointed out, it's just 1.5 people. There's a lot of volunteers, a lot of people that care about this community, and particularly the downtown, that make things happen, and I appreciate that. A couple of things, thinking about, you mentioned the murals, and I think I mentioned this to both you and Clint Holly, but don't just think about art. Think about what already exists and what could be touched up. When you're up on the roof of that hotel, there's something very unique and has been there for a while that maybe could be very worth touching up. The mayor mentioned the meals and the lodging tax. I'm very interested in the amount of real estate tax, because that's really what I think you do and do well, is get people to invest in downtown. Not everything is going to be something that generates meals tax or lodging tax or sales tax even. I mean, you've got lots, or it might generate a combination thereof, but it's that, and you talk about that and do a real good job at leveraging what little bit of public money you get with private investment. And over time, that's a stable source of revenue for the city. So that's something you do very well. The one question I'd ask, and I know, your request was more than you've received last year, more than you've received in a few years, and I know, there are a lot of needs from just basic operational needs. But is there anything you see, any opportunity you see in the coming year that you feel if you don't get the money is an opportunity that we're going to miss out on because the funding isn't there?
Well, we've since, going back to the employment, we used to have 2 full-time employees, which is still very little, and going down to the 1 full-time and 1 part-time was our first big cut to our organization once funding was in real jeopardy. Since we have done very slim, shavings off of little things to not make a big difference as far as the public goes. But I will say, if funding continues to be an issue, then we will see major issues with Border Bash quality and some of those community favorites. We won't be able to add any additional programming in those winter months. It would be lower than status quo as of now, and we're better than that.
Anything else? All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, next we are going to hear from the birthplace of country music, and that is Miss Ross.
Mr. Mayor and council members, thank you for giving us the opportunity to present tonight. What you'll hear today, we're going to give you a brief presentation of what we did a while back when we did a joint city council meeting. So we're just going over some of those highlights. But first, I do want to start with our mission, as we always do, to perpetuate, promote, and celebrate Bristol's rich musical heritage, to educate and engage audience worldwide regarding the history, impact, and legacy of the 1927 Bristol Sessions, and to create recognition, opportunities, and economic benefit for our local and regional communities. And that part of that last of our mission, the last part, is what's most important to us. As you know, we have 3 branches. First, I'll talk about Radio Bristol. It broadcasts from the Birthplace of Country Music Museum 24/7. Every day they're on the radio. We have listeners in all 50 states and over 140 foreign countries. One thing that I want to touch on that you'll hear more about tomorrow is that we do a monthly radio show live from the Birthplace of Country Music Museum called Farm and Fun Time. And it's to a live audience, and it's broadcast on Facebook Live. But tomorrow we'll be doing a press conference announcing our Farm and Fun Time will soon be on PBS regionally, starting in the spring of 2020. It's an exciting time for us to introduce our organization to a new audience. Then we have our reunion. As you know, it's a 3-day event with 19 stages and over 130 bands. We use about 1,000 volunteers that weekend. And this is what happened in 2019. We had over 40,000 in attendance. It represented 41 states and 6 foreign countries. This was how our attendance was broken down. 30% from Bristol, 40% from non-Bristol regional, and then 30% in a greater than 60-mile radius. If you look at that and you look at that, we have a pretty educated, what I would consider a crowd that comes to our festival. These are the ages that represent that. And when you look at our 33 and 43%, those are individuals that have usually more expendable income and a better way of traveling. But I think this speaks even more to those numbers is that 70% of those people who come to our festival come all 3 days. And I think that is why you see our hotels at capacity, not only in Bristol, but we see Abington, Kingsport, and Johnson City at almost capacity. Then let's talk about, this year will be our 20th anniversary of Bristol Rhythm and Roots Reunion. As you know, typically we have been on the third weekend of September for 18 years. That first year we were in October, but we've been on that third year and people have gotten used to that. But as you know, Bristol Motor Speedway was awarded a race for the Chase, and so we had to look at new dates, and we chose that weekend before the festival after meeting with different people. And one of the things that it did for us was it given us an opportunity to promote rhythm and racing and hopefully get more people in town early. So, and we see that, I think we're at over 100, we're doing a joint ticket and we're over 100 right now of those tickets being signed. The other thing that has made a difference for us is the way that we rolled out our lineup. Traditionally, we gave a sneak peek in December, and then it was April or May before we rolled out our lineup, the rest of it. We have, in December, we announced 13 of our headliners. In February, we announced the rest of our lineup. And because of that, ticket sales are up 16% from the same time last year. One of the things that we found very important, and I think you see that trend in a festival, is that more and more people are announcing early because they want to get a jump on people choosing their festival, and we see that. You know, we did an economic impact in 2015 that showed a 16.1 million economic impact for non-regional visitors, and we had scheduled to have one this year, because that we changed our year, we felt like we should defer that to next year to see how that went. The other thing that we did last year that we had never done before, the Birthplace of Country Music had a Bristol Sessions Super Raffle. It was highly successful for us, raised money for the museum, and we are already in the plans for our second raffle in September. Applications have been sent to Virginia and Tennessee to get permission to do that, and we have already acquired all our prizes that will be given away then. Now, to talk about the Birthplace of Country Music Museum. As you all know, we're an affiliate of the Smithsonian. That brings a lot of credibility to us and opens up doors for us that we might not otherwise have. We've had visitors from all 50 states and over foreign countries since we opened. We've had numerous award and rave reviews. We've hosted over 550 groups since we opened, and we're seeing a steady growth in attendance. Economic impact. In 2018, we met with 104 tour operators. In 2019, we met with 160 tour operators. And part of this was because of your all's investment in helping us to go to additional tour operator conferences. And what that did for us, we had 46 motor coach tours in 2019, and that resulted in a 23% increase in motor coach tour visitors over 2018. And I will tell you that our numbers are already up. We have only 1 month, and I am sorry I can't remember what it is, that we don't have a tour bus booked for 2020. And you know, we talk a lot about the hotels and the reason that they came to our downtown, and it was primarily, they say, because of the Birthplace of Country Music and the festival. The Sessions Hotel, excited to get that opened. Marcus McCall said that for the Bristol Hotel. But one of the things that, I'm pushing, there. The Birthplace of Country Music was the key factor. But another one that I would like to talk about is the Ernest Tube, and I know somebody mentioned that earlier. That's a new business that was in our downtown, and I'd like to read what Clint Hawley says about this. Bonnie and I decided to move to Bristol and bring my business there because we deeply believe in the cultural heritage and history of the area, especially Bristol proper. The existence of the BCM Museum and associated radio station and festival allowed us to find partners also involved in telling the world how country music evolved from humble roots. Bristol is as important as Memphis, Austin, Chicago, Detroit, and other music towns. We felt there is a huge opportunity to help tell Bristol's story, much like those other cities. Also, the people have been wonderful and welcoming from the very start of our journey. You know, he came from Ohio and opened that. And we met with him a couple of weeks ago, and I'm sure that you all probably already know this. He bought a warehouse on Piedmont Street, and he's moving his whole company to Bristol in 2020. So that's pretty exciting. Educational impact. These are the things that we do educationally. We do school tours, we do summer camps. I mean, we do a lot of things to keep bringing people to our downtown. We educate both adults and children. We hosted 39 school tours in 2018, representing 1,342 students. In 2019, we hosted 55 school tours, representing 1,921 students. Educational impact are on our summer camps. We have summer camps. This will be our 6th year. In 2019, our summer camps filled up almost as soon as we put them out there. One of the things that I think is interesting to say to this one, our summer camp, we've had a family from Atlanta, 2 years, who have brought have 3 children. They've brought them to our summer camp and stayed here all week while their children went to summer camp. Pride and perception impact. As you can see, and I know most of you all know Ben Talley, it makes me proud of my hometown and my heritage. We hear this all the time. You know, I had cousins in last week from California and Charlotte and Roanoke, and especially California. It was his first time coming here, and he said, "I can't believe this is in Bristol. It's been so many years since I've been here," and he said, "It's awesome," and he said, "You're downtown. I can't believe it." Additional items of interest, I think, to all of us is the country music, a film by Kim Burns. The promotional roadshow kicked off in Bristol. And normally PBS controls all of that kickoff show. And when Kim Burns told him that he was kicking it off in Bristol, we got a call of, "What are you all doing? This is our stuff." And we said, "We've been working with Kim Burns since the very beginning." And he felt like it was very important that he started here to promote his film. And it spoke volume of what he believed started country music. And he was on CBS Morning News a week after he was here, and one of the things he said on that was, "I'm here to tell you the thing that everyone must do if they're going to follow this is come to that town in Bristol. It's special." He says it's so moving. And I want to say that Bristol, Virginia's funding helped BCM leverage funding from Virginia Tourism to advertise the museum at the beginning and the end of each episode. And we felt like that was an opportunity once in a lifetime. And what it did for us, it allowed us to be in Washington, D.C., we were in Richmond, we were in all of North Carolina, we were in Nashville, we were in on Blue Ridge PBS, which touches West Virginia, Kentucky, and all of Virginia, and then Northeast Tennessee PBS. So we felt like that we really had an opportunity to promote travel to here. One of the things that I will say on this, every morning when I come to work, or I'll say 95% of the time I come to work, I always cut through that little cut-through in front of the museum and the hotel. And it is very rare that there are not at least 6 different out-of-states representatives. And lots of times there's over 10 representatives. So, and we think this is part of it. And we saw that happening. If you look at that, 34.5 million unique viewers over the initial 8 episodes. They streamed 4 million times on Amazon Prime in the first month. PBS rebroadcasted in January and February, and it has been broadcast in the UK and will be broadcast all over Europe. The impact was a dramatic increase in museum visitation. I want to show this short video.
Tennessee is a laboratory. It's always been a place where we've permitted experimentation. Ralph Peer recorded both the Carter family and then a few days later, Jimmie Rodgers. People call it the Big Bang. The museum in Bristol. All of that is worth having to collect the artifacts, the photographs, the instruments. If we hadn't had those Bristol sessions, there'd be no rock and roll.
I will tell you, Tennessee came up with a passport for all the things that you saw there. And if you get all of your places stamped in this book, that's all over the state in different places, then you get some kind of prize. I forget what it is. But the first place on that stop is the birthplace of country music in Bristol, Virginia. Oh, I want to go back. Sorry. Okay. Neil, you can remember this. Back in December, Marty Stewart was going to ride on the Santa train, and we got a call from Kingsport and said, Marty's going to ride on the Santa train. We want to make sure if you need an opportunity to meet with him or anything, we want to give that to you. So we was able to get this to happen during that time period. But what this is, Marty Stewart helped start the Mississippi Country Music Trail in Mississippi. And he is probably one of the biggest advocates of Bristol and the importance of Bristol in the country music. So they brought a marker to Bristol telling the importance of the Bristol sessions and the role that Jimmie Rodgers played in it, and the other people in Mississippi that's important. And one of the things that they want us to do, and we're working on how is that going to work, is we're going to take a historic marker from Bristol representing with the city seal from Virginia and Tennessee on there to Mississippi in the near future. So I thought that was pretty cool. What is our financial status? In our branches, Bristol Rhythm and Roots is profitable. We'd like to be a lot more profitable. Our Radio Bristol is near break even, but the museum will always need significant support. This is how the American Alliance of Museum breaks down where museums are funded from. 27.6% comes from earned income, and that's what we do. We sell tickets, we have events, we have a museum store. The rest comes from government support, private charitable giving, and other income. What if the money is needed from private charitable giving, business and engines, and all the other things? $1.2 million per year, and that will we need to sustain that annual level, adjusted for inflation. As you can see right now, our actual budget is a little over $1 million. Our operating income that we raise is $289,000. So our shortfall is $882,000. If you look to the right, that's what our budget we need. And that shortfall must be met through private charitable giving, sponsorships, city and state support, grants, and fundraisers. What are we doing to address that shortfall? Continue evaluation of ways to increase revenue and control costs. Use the building block concept approach to fundraising. And our building block concept is individual giving, corporate contributions, grant and foundation support, and the Bristol Session Super Raffle. That's what we're doing to do that. Government support at all levels, not just from our city, but our state and our federal. And we get a lot of that through our grants and foundation. Why should Bristol, Virginia support BCM? We are executing our mission. We're having a significantly and positive impact on economics in Bristol and on economic development in Bristol and the surrounding region. We're engaging in educating our children and citizens and people worldwide regarding Bristol and Bristol's place in the history of American music. We're creating a source of pride for our citizens and improving the awareness and perception of Bristol locally, nationally, and internationally. Clicker. Why should you support us? Bristol will always be the birthplace of country music. We may have many things that come and go, but we will always be the birthplace of country music. It should be promoted, not constrained or ignored. BCM is positioned with organization structure, assets, efficiency, and governance to enable Bristol to take maximum advantage of that legacy. You've already made an investment in the museum. We are not asking for full support and have demonstrated that we are working hard to become financially sustainable, but we need your help. We believe that Bristol, Virginia should provide us with annual support for the museum to protect your investment, to help us financially, and to be a partner and supporter, and to help us help you. We will provide a significant return on your investment. The value of Bristol's legacy. Another short video.
Bristol is the absolute bedrock upon which the entire empire of country music and many tributaries therein are built.
That's what Catch the Chord from Old Crow said. One thing I'd like to, before I close, I want to tell one other sort of short story. I got a call about a month ago from an artist out of Nashville, Dallas Wayne, has a radio show on Sirius XM, and he said, "Lee, I'm coming to Bristol to look about moving." I said, "What?" He said, "Yes," and he told me when he would be here. So I met him, and he had already arranged with a realtor to look around. And I said, "So Dallas, why are you coming to Bristol?" He said, "You know what? When I'm thinking about leaving," he lives in Austin, he said, "it's sort of like Nashville. We are being overtaken." And he said, "I look at Bristol and I can get to DC in 5 hours. I can get to Nashville in 4 hours. I can get almost anywhere on the eastern coast in less than the time it takes me to get from Austin to Nashville." And he said, it's such the history there and everything. So he came up and he found a house. He put an offer in on it. Someone else had put an offer. But I got a text from him this week saying, "We got the house." He's coming April the 13th to close on that house. One of the things he told me when he was here, he said, "Lee, I want to tell you something. I told a little lie on my radio show this week." And I said, "What did you do, Dallas?" And he said, "Well, I recorded it before I left Austin, and all through the show, I said, I'm coming to you live from the birthplace of country music in Bristol, Virginia." And so I think that speaks, I think we have an opportunity here. You know, we're having artists move here from Asheville to Bristol because they can't afford to stay in Asheville. We've got a good vibe of music going here. From the Bristol Hotel having music every Wednesday night on the top of the roof, to our museum presenting more and more programming, whether it's through music or film or anything that we do. And so I think we are making a difference in our community, and I would urge you to support us in any manner that you can. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and open it up for questions.
Just a quick question or two. Well, first of all, I wanted to say for anyone here or watching at home who has not been to the museum, it's incredible, and you need to go. You know, earlier we talked about some of the things we already have in downtown, places to shop, places to eat. The museum is just another tool in our toolbox for our incredible downtown. So one question I had, and you touched on it lightly a little bit, was something that we're doing that we've not done before, where we've sold those joint tickets for the race and the festival where they're back to back. So you all have started selling those, and has that been successful?
Like I said, we've sold over 100 so far. Our ticket sales so far this year are up 16%, but that does not include those 100 that we have because they're sold through Bristol Motor Speedway, and we'll get that. But you know, I don't know what we expected, but it gave us an opportunity to advertise to that group of people, because in the August race, well, in the September race now, they normally come in early. They're offering a camping package. They're offering free shuttle service from the racetrack. They're opening up camping earlier than they've ever done. So I think that, I don't know that we had an expectation. So I think if we end up selling 200 tickets to that, maybe it's 200 people. One of the things that we had a meeting this morning about that week, and one of the things that Logan McCabe is supposed to be getting from us is where are those tickets being sold? Is it people locally that's taking advantage of that, or is it people that are coming in early?
And just my last question, I know you said you're doing the super raffle again at the festival, and you know what all the prizes are for this year? Any way you can give us a hint about the grand prize?
Well, I think the grand prize will always be the $25,000.
Okay.
We had to secure every single prize before you can apply to the Virginia lottery.
Okay.
So, or Virginia, whatever it is. Gaming, you apply through that. So you have to have all those secured before then. So we have a great list again.
So one question I had, if you go to the Beale Street Music Festival in Memphis, it's one of the bigger ones in the country. They've done some things around that music festival to try to get more people to come. And one is that, barbecue cook-off they have, the week leading up to the music festival. You guys talked about maybe doing something like that for Rhythm and the Roots to get, the crowds to come early, a few days, have some kind of competitions like that, because we do have an Appalachian heritage, and I think you might be able to leverage some of that kind of stuff.
Part of our meeting, and it was the people that are in that meeting are representatives. In the past, Randy and Bill Sawyer have attended, but they weren't able to today. But it's people from both sides, plus us and some others. But that was one of the things that we talked about today. What can we do, like either on Thursday night or even in Monday and Tuesday between the festival and Food City Race Night? How can we keep that going for almost 2 weeks?
Okay. And the other thing we talked, I can't remember if it was last year or year before, but we were talking about what can we do to Cumberland Park. We've got an opportunity there to maybe make the sound system, make the stage, do something to make the park more conducive to have, your ability to have some nice little, small concerts over there to draw more crowds in. Again, trying to get the people in at the October, November, the slow times. Have you guys talked any more about what it would take to do that, to where we could? And I think just leverage folks that are trying to cut a country music record, have a regular routine where they could have their own concert outdoors and pay tickets. That's the kind of stuff that can, grow over a few years and help you be self-sustaining.
Kevin, I know that we have, I found the drawings for the, I hunted them down, the schematic drawings and everything for that, for the stage over there. And I met with Randy, and I have talked to a couple people. It's looking at that and how do we add things so we don't have to have that big scaffolding to put stuff. So I think that, and Randy, you want to talk, has any other work been done on that?
And I think Wallace can speak to that as well. We did have a structural engineering study completed on that. There are some items that have to be bought in order for that to be completed. I think, is it expensive? No, but there will be some cost to fixing that stage so that you don't have to worry about renting the scaffolding.
And it also makes it more conducive to any other organization that might want to bring something there. AC Entertainment has talked about doing something again in Bristol. Different people have talked about that. So I think the possibility of using, and I think it's underutilized, it's getting that plan together and how does it work?
Well, again, the hotel and the restaurants downtown, they need that kind of activity, right? So we got to come up with ways to do that. So I don't know if you've ever been to Charlotte and go to the PNC Pavilion, and they have a concert series that goes on pretty much all year. They have new live entertainment every weekend. It's phenomenal. But, we would never be PNC Pavilion, but that could be our little PNC Pavilion, the Cumberland Park. You could bring in the smaller bands that are trying to make a name for themselves, and you draw 1,000 people, you draw 500, a weekend. That's better than zero, right? So if it's done right,
500 is better than zero.
Yeah. So if it's done right, I think you could, over time, it would get a name for itself. You would get, maybe you only do one every other week or something to start, but I think we got to think about that, because that Bristol Hotel on this side of Cumberland Avenue, that whole park area, that's the next kind of opportunity that's in front of us to do something to get, a more lively kind of atmosphere going, to help the businesses and the hotel and so forth.
I would agree with you, Kevin.
But we got to do it. We got to kind of get together and do it, right?
Yep.
Couple of comments and then a couple of questions. One, I appreciate you talking about having that quote from Clint, because I think that's a good example.
We talk about the hotels all the time, but there's so many other businesses that have come to Bristol.
Yeah.
Well,
no, and I've had some conversations with Clint, and that you brought up, not only has he invested in a building downtown, brought a business there, he's invested other places in the community, but it's also a good way of Maggie's still here, because he went through their entrepreneur challenge, and how those programs feed in to each other, even without y'all really meaning it to, how people see those things in downtown building off of each other and working. And I appreciate him and everyone that makes an investment downtown. And speaking of investment, I appreciate you kind of updating us on what happened with the money last year, particularly for the bus tours. That's really good to see that go up. That helps everybody downtown, the museum, the hotels, the shops, the restaurants, as well as the money we helped to give and was leveraged by Virginia Tourism for Kim Burns, which I've heard you talk about before, has had almost immediate impact when that came out in September. And it was a very good series. And I think, unlike a lot of things, Kim Burns, that series will have legs. It will endure for quite a while. So I expect you to see that. It's also good to hear about tomorrow's announcement with the radio. I think that's something that has a lot of potential. That, you think of the festival, you think of the museum, people don't think about the radio as one of those legs of the organization, but that has a lot of potential to market and draw people to this community, and particularly, just like the museum and the festival build on that heritage, Farm and Fun Time is building on what was here right downtown decades ago, and you're recreating that, and I think that has a lot of potential. One of my questions is, in all of this with the change with the festival date and things going on with Kim Burns and stuff, I know the request is more, I think it's the same you asked for last year, but more than we gave. So are there any, looking forward to this year, the same kind of question I asked Maggie, are there any opportunities that if we don't give you, I know there's operational needs, there's other needs for the organization, but things in particular that really you need this money because there's some unique opportunities coming up that you'd like to take advantage of?
For us, it's very operational, and we run a very lean staff. We would love to do more in education, but we just don't have the wherewithal to do that. So that's one of an area that as we look toward accreditation, we're weak in that, where we can being financially stable, and that's one of the things that the museum wants to do. So, it's just, how do we offer the programs that we offer, from special exhibits to bringing, so many things in. If we don't get it, then we look at what can we do.
Yeah, I understand that. I mean, and also if you don't get it, you lose opportunities. So,
We do.
And then my next question kind of gets into that with the museum. A few years back, you came and asked us to help be the applicant on a grant to DHCD for the annex building. Anything you would like to say about that and the status of that?
We have been working with Sally Morgan and them on submitting a grant for DHCD for $50,000 for the annex. We have $50,000 in the budget for Virginia and for in the session that we're in now and the next session, the 2021, the next year. And so if that comes in, and it's for capital expenditure, it's so that we can finish that building in between the museum and the hotel. And we also have John Lundberg and John Crawford, our representatives on the Tennessee side, have put $50,000 in. If we can get those in, and we can get from Virginia, then we have enough. We have a private individual that's interested in getting a group together and say, hey, I need to give you this. We did get a $250,000 grant from the Cobble Foundation in Richmond for the annex expansion, but we have to match it with $550,000. So if we get from the state, from both states, that money, and we get those, then we are able to get our historic tax credits and new market tax credits. So because our goal is for the same with the annex as we did the museum, is when we open those doors that we have paid for it and we don't have to go out and borrow money.
That'd be great. And again, to Councilman Mumpower's point about the park and along Cumberland, I mean, you've got a $14 million facility that was rehabilitated in the museum. The other end of the block, $20 million facility that was rehabilitated, and then this building in the middle that really needs something done to it to help finish out that block. So that'd be great.
So roughly how much money are you guys needing to be sustainable? Another 50 grand a year, some net profit number of about 50, 100 grand get you kind of break even across the board, or is it more than that?
Well, it will get us close. We're continue to work on our individual giving, and we're blessed with that. I mean, we're almost at $300,000 of people giving to us annually, and we've had a very successful 90% rate of people coming back. So it'll get us further than we are now.
So if somebody handed you a $150,000 check right now, above and beyond everything you've been getting this year and next year, would that be sustainable for the museum going forward?
Not by itself. I mean,
No, with everything
with
status
everything
quo,
else.
everything you're already doing, just how much are you needing to, get yourself above the waterline?
I'd have to break it down to all of those, because when we're looking at, we need 888,000, 150 is a portion of that. The other and we're doing grading grants. I mean, we have put a grant task force together. We have 2 people that they work on it all the time. So we're seeing that pay off.
So you're needing about $1 million.
Yes.
Well, I just want to say a couple things. One thing I was going to mention before you even began your slide was the opportunity we had with Marty Stewart in December to come here. And it's one of those things that gets Bristol's name out and connects you with another city. And I know you were very generous to put my picture in there, and thank you for saying it just how I wrote it for you.
I didn't put that picture in there, somebody put that in there for me. But that was a good picture. It was a great day.
That increased the value of your slide by like 100%.
I know.
I would give you a nickel for it.
We're brown nosing.
I couldn't tell. No, but I appreciate it. And the other thing that I think is important that you showed us is the deliverables, because we gave you a little bit more money last year. And so, I mean, you've got, what did we say, a 23% increase in buses from 2018 to 2019 year over year. And the ticket sales for Rhythm and Roots, I'm on the Rhythm and Roots board, as you know. Ticket sales are up. We've got a lot of exciting stuff that I've heard at that board meeting going on. So I think it's going to be a good year. So most of what you're playing with the increase that you might get from us would be for operational stuff and maybe for
Yes.
education. Okay, so are you short-staffed? In what areas?
We're short-staffed, and we don't have an education person, and we do not have a curator of collections, which you need to have for a museum. But our staff has done that. We have done all that we can. We could do a lot more, especially with an education person, because our head curator is in charge of our exhibits and many of the things that we do.
Is the educational person you mentioned, is that a revenue generator, or is that just a cost? Or do they?
It could be both. I mean, there is a cost associated with it, but we can't, you know, we could do workshops where we charge for. We could get more students in there, and they pay a reduced rate. So it is a cost, but you would hope that it would generate some money
So
depending
the
on what you're
position
doing.
could pay for itself?
I think it could come close to it if we worked it right.
All right, do we have anything else? All right, thank you very much.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it. All right, now before we go on to item 5, which is our presentation from the school board, I see some people who might want to stand up and stretch their legs a little bit, so we're going to take a 10-minute recess. All right. Thank y'all for coming back from the recess. We're going to go ahead and get right back into it with our next item on the agenda, which is the presentation of the Bristol, Virginia Public Schools budget request for fiscal year 2021 from Dr. Perigin.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, let me first say that I do not have the coronavirus. If you go back and look at previous budget presentations I've made, it's always this time of year that my allergies, start to act up. So I do have some cough drops handy, and so I don't want to give anybody any fear that I'm the person from Sullivan County who has the coronavirus, but certainly prayers to that family. And yeah, absolutely. I've got one in my pocket too. Prayers to that family and the folks involved with that. We are, like Mr. E said, we've also been in conversation. We're developing a plan to deal with the coronavirus should it come to the city and have an impact on our school day. And we'll probably have an email that goes out later this evening with information regarding that. So, without any further ado, our school board at our last meeting approved our budget for fiscal year 2021. And as we develop our budget every year, it is our practice to use the vision of the City Council and the vision of our school system in order to make sure that we're hitting our budget priorities. I'm sure you're familiar with your own document as you talk about the focus areas for you to be able to obtain your vision. And obviously, our school system falls into several of the categories that you have chosen to be your focus areas. A couple of those that I will bring to your attention specifically and quote your vision statements as a result of that is that it is your strategic and focused, that you believe that the strategic and focused increase of educational funding has seeded, nourished, and grown our workforce to be the envy of the nation. That's in the economic hub focus area. And then also in the foundation for the future is that businesses, individuals, and families relocate to this area and families relocate to the area to take advantage of these educational opportunities that are not found in other nearby communities. One thing that I will say just to this particular one, I know this is your vision, but one thing that we are looking at doing is reinstituting the International Baccalaureate program at Virginia High. There are no other school divisions in Southwest Virginia that offer that, and that's one thing that we're trying to accomplish we'll start the process during the next school year. And then if you look at our vision as a school division is to prepare all students to thrive in what we know is a very dynamically changing world. And so when you combine those two visions and our school board goals, which are also part of our comprehensive plan, our school board developed a set of budget priorities, and you'll see the two that I've highlighted there in blue that go directly to workforce, and that's fully funding expansion of our CTE program, and then also we're working to provide a work-based learning counselor to help students make the transition from high school into employment after graduation. Some other budget priorities that our school board set was to increase compensation, also to invest in a secure and safe environment for our students. We have a B180 program where we offer year-round school for the families who want to participate in it. We did not get the grant for that this year, and we're looking at other ways. We're going to apply for the grant again, hopefully be able to offer that, but we're looking for other grants to use as well. That's a great service to the families in our community that use it. That's currently not part of our budget. We are looking for ways to do that. We're also looking, I mentioned the International Baccalaureate, funding capital improvement priorities, obviously. reallocating funding to provide STEM materials and a possible STEM coach. It looks like we're going to be able to do that through a grant that we're doing with the United Way. We want to recruit and retain new hires, possibly through bonuses. We did that some last year with some money that we had left over at the end of the year. We're not sure that we're going to have that available. If we do have money available at the end of the year, that will be a possible strategy that we use. One of the things that I wanted to make part of our budget for this year is creating a new fund for things that we don't know that yet exist, things that we need to expose our students to. You know, when we talk about virtual reality and 3D printing and technology such as that, that's really old technology, and many of our students have not even had access to that. So we want to be on the cutting edge and forward thinking. That's not part of this budget. We're waiting to see how the state budget comes to see if there's money available there for us to be able to fund that, that particular project. We have, as you know, a couple years ago, one of the first things that we did when I came on the scene was we had contracted services for custodial services for our division. We took that on ourselves. Our schools are much cleaner now. But we are using some of our bus aides as also they do double duty and also serve as day porters. Is we're trying to separate those positions, and we think we have a plan for that. And then as Van Pelt's enrollment continues to grow and the programs that we offer there continue to have students who with more and more severe issues that we have to deal with, we're looking at adding not an assistant principal, but you can thank assistant principal. We're going to call that person a dean. And they will not be paid on a full assistant principal salary scale. They won't have a 12-month contract, but you can think of them in that capacity. And so that was what drove the budget discussions that we had this school year. And I'll go very quickly into our budget summary. These three funds I used to do at the end. I'm going to do those at the beginning now. These are our carry-overable funds. We don't have many of those. Most of our funds we have to spend by the end of the year. If not, we don't have access to them the following years. These are exceptions. School nutrition, you'll see our startup accounts there. Our textbook fund is really what we use to buy computers for our school division. And you can see that we anticipate spending $589,000 on computers and textbooks. And then local capital, that is the fund that we use obviously for some capital project needs. And we have $444,000 in proposed expenditures, which we don't know exactly what direction we'll be doing that, but I'll mention some of the potential proposed expenditures that we have in that area later in the presentation. So, going to our general fund budget, we are basing this information on the governor's proposed budget, which was released December 17th. As you know, there is a conference budget that has been released. It will not be voted on until Thursday. Those numbers will obviously change, but we did not have those numbers to build a budget, so we used the governor's budget. And one of our goals is to take 1/2 of supplemental lottery and restrict that for capital needs. That's been a goal of ours for several years. This past year, we did not meet that goal. This year, we plan to meet it, and as a matter of fact, the conference budget, as it is currently written, requires that 30% of that be restricted for capital needs. I think that was the conference committee's plan to address school facilities and construction in the state budget. There's no new money there. They're just going to require that we set aside 30% of our lottery, which is, that particular fund is about $500,000. And so 30% of that, somewhere between $130 and $150 that will be required to set aside in state money towards school facilities, construction, school buses, that type of thing. We also made a significant update to our salary scale for support. Currently, we had several employee classes that were making well below $10 an hour. What we saw is that we were losing those employees left and right, and we were spending all of our time doing re-interviewing, trying to get new people on board, and then very shortly thereafter we would lose them again. So we've got our scale up to the point this year that in the approved scale that no hourly employee will make less than $11 per hour. Obviously that's not, that's still not as competitive as we'd like it to be, but it is a good benchmark, and it'll fall in line with the new minimum wages that have been recommended by the state and give us a good start of preparing for the increases that we know to anticipate there in the very near future. We also included a VRS rate increase, which is required by the state. You're probably feeling that same pain here at the city level, but that's part of our budget. The recommendation currently is to discontinue the cosmetology program that we have at Virginia High School and we've actually started teaching the first classes this year, offering a nursing program. We know in our community that the nursing jobs abound. However, we have not been offering classes to get students certified in that area. We offered the first class this year. That'll be the intro class to that. And next year we'll be offering Nurses Aid 1 in the first semester and Nurses Aid 2 in the second semester. And so we're excited about helping to provide the workforce that our community needs, not just the classes that, that we've been offering historically at our school division. I've already mentioned the elementary dean, and then I've also mentioned already restoring a portion of lottery to capital. So when all is said and done, it looks like from the governor's budget that we will receive an increase in state funding in our general fund of about $814,000. That will change once we get the conference budget. A majority of that $814,000 is in the at-risk add-on. That is funding that we receive because of the large percentage of students that we have that are eligible for free or reduced price lunches. You can use that for a very select few things. What we choose to use ours for is to make our salary scale for teachers more competitive. And that's where the increases, we've had increases to the at-risk add-on over the last couple of years, and we've used that money to get our salary scale more competitive with other school divisions in our region. And then we also have restricted revenues of $500,000. That's carryover money that we have from our lottery. Then our federal, there's an increase in what we anticipate our federal revenues to be, very slight increase. Local revenue, we are going to be requesting an increase of $214,000. The other revenue that you see there, that is money that just is flow through between us and Washington County Public Schools for partnerships that we have, and also for the dual enrollment program that we share with Virginia Highlands Community College. So for a total increase in revenues of $1.6 million, but keep in mind, most of that is truly accessible to us is the $814,000. The rest of that is either flow through or carryover. And expenditures match up the same way. You'll see the most important thing I think to note on this slide is the bulk of our budget is spent on student instruction, and the bulk of that instructional money is spent on salaries. A small increase to administration, attendance, and health, a small increase to transportation, also to facilities as well. That is also a carryover of grant funds. And and then we do have some debt service that we take care of that's not part of the city doesn't take care of that debt service. We take care of that out of our normal appropriation. And then technology, which is, again, I told you that is through the VSPA, and those are funds that we can carry over. So for a total increase of expenditures of the same as our revenues of $1.6 million. So we have a balanced budget. Our operating budget in fiscal year 2020 has been $28 million, almost $29 million. It will go up to $30,500,000. And again, that increase truly, the new dollars is really the $814,000 that we'll receive in the state. Most of that coming from the at-risk add-on, which is restricted. So going back to 2017 and 18, our budget was just under $7 million. Our local city budget was just under $7 million. In 2018-19, that was cut by $300,000. This year, the current year that we're in currently, you have reappropriated an additional $86,000. That is for salaries of our two new maintenance staff, if you'll remember that from earlier in the year. And then our request is for additional $214,000, and we would use that to take care of capital needs that we have at Virginia High and for Virginia Middle School, or even to possibly purchase a school bus or two. So one of the things that I'd like to call to your attention, a couple of members of City Council have said repeatedly that our school board has neglected our schools for several years. Since 2012, when our school board decided they were going to move to a two-school model, our school board has invested $10 million in our facilities. I won't read each of those projects that have been taken care of through that investment of $10 million, but it's a pretty significant investment. And just wanted to make sure there was that we cleared the air on that we have continued to invest in our facilities to the tune of about $10 million. Here are some capital needs that we have currently. We are in the process of completing our vestibules. Highland View is almost completed. Van Pelt obviously is complete. After the installation at Highland View, there were some design issues that we needed to correct, and so we'll be correcting those at Washington Lee and also at Stonewall Jackson. We would like to build a vestibule next year at Virginia High School. We have a plan for that. We have a couple of elevators, one at Virginia Middle and one at Virginia High, that need to be replaced. That it could possibly be taken care of through CDBG. We've got the science hallway at Virginia High School needs a new roof and also new rooftop units. And we need to replace the soffit and guttering at Virginia Middle School. In addition to that, one of the things that we need to take care of, Virginia High School and Virginia Middle School are not fully ADA compliant. They're mostly ADA compliant. But one of the things that we need to take care of there is the door hardware at those schools. And we estimate a little over $100,000 to take care of those ADA needs. Now, these are just some of the things that are on our capital improvement plan, but those are some pretty pressing needs that we think go at the top of the list. We have several other items on that, and you have had copies of that in the past. I can send you a refreshed copy of our capital improvement plan if you like. But I mentioned earlier some of the capital needs that we'd like to take care of out of this next year budget. These are the ones that would be at the top of the list for us. And so going back to our vision, I won't read those to you again, but as you plan and prepare your budget, the vision for our city is that you strategically and in a focused way increase educational funding in order for us to do the job that we should do, which is to make sure that we have the best workforce in the nation. And when we do that, that will also help in attracting businesses and families to come to our area so that we can prepare all students to thrive in our dynamically changing world. And you mentioned Mr. Odell earlier, Mr. Hartley. We wanted to end the presentation with a big thank you to Mr. Odell, but also to City Council for your dedication to providing a school resource officer in every building that we have. That does not go unnoted, that is also a contribution that you make to our school system that does not show up on our books. I know from our staff standpoint, from the administration standpoint, and from our parent standpoint, that is something that is greatly appreciated from all of those stakeholders, and it helps make Bristol City Schools some of the safest schools in our area. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
All right, thank you. We'll go ahead and open it up for any questions.
Mr. Mayor, one other thing I'd like to add. You should have access to a budget book. This is the first year that we put this together. But really, if you have any question, you want to dig deeper into our budget, any whatsoever, this is full disclosure, everything that you should need to know about the way our budget works and operates. So I'd like to just say a big thank you to Tammy Jones, our CFO, for putting this together. In the interest of being transparent and fully disclosing all the information, this is going to be a great document for you and for the public to use.
We do appreciate you making that available. Go ahead and open it up for questions.
Well, the question I've got is, when did you say the budget will be passed by the state legislature? And are you going to update your budget based on that?
Yes, we always do. We never have, because of the timeline that's set here, we always have to use the governor's budget. The conference budget allegedly or supposedly it'll be voted on Thursday.
So you think maybe in a couple of weeks we'd have an update, or how long do you think it'd take for you to update yours once that's
if they approve it Thursday, the Virginia Department of Education will try as quickly as they can to get the impact to our city, to us, as quickly as possible. That I would hope that would be by the weekend, but I would say middle of next week at the latest. We do anticipate, if you look at the House budget and the Senate budget before they went to conference, both of those budgets had an additional $300,000 of restricted funding that would go to the schools. In the Senate budget, they had about $130,000 that would have been restricted to school construction, facilities, debt service, that type of thing. It didn't make it through the conference budget. The rest of those items are restricted for at-risk add-on or teacher salaries. One of the changes in the first year of the biennium is going to be a 2% raise for teachers. We were doing that out of at-risk add-on. There's going to be some money that's available in teacher salaries to do that anyway. So it won't change our salary scales because we've already went higher than 2%, about 2.14% on average. Our teachers will get next year with the step and a 1% raise.
some of the money that you are asking us to appropriate, you said would be used for possibly school buses. Could you give us an idea about like how many buses do we have, and would you say that our entire fleet, it's getting a little older, and how long has it been since we've replaced other buses?
Yeah, so we've replaced 3 buses since I've been in the division, and we try to keep those. We actually, in addition to having a capital improvement plan for our facilities, we also have a transportation plan where we've got a plan on when we want to replace our buses, when we want to replace the cars in our fleet. And I do not know from memory the age or the average age of our buses, but we do have that information readily available, and we'll get that sent to you tomorrow. Page 32 of your budget book.
Can you update us on the ADA of each of the schools, like Washington Lee, is it ADA yet, and how much does they have to spend? Highland View, just go down the list.
If you'll remember, I'm saying this from memory, it was about $3 to $4 million to make Washington Lee ADA compliant.
How much?
$3 to $4 million, and I'm saying that from memory. So total for Washington Lee, Highland View, Stonewall Jackson, and Van Pelt, it was between $13 and $14 million. And I think that Washington Lee was between 3 and 4, with the bulk of that being the requirement to add 2 new elevators. So we're not, in any stretch of the imagination, going to be ADA compliant there. What we decided to do as part of our agreement last year was we were going to make 1 restroom on 1 floor ADA accessible, and we were going to add safety vestibules. That is the only improvements that we're making at Highland View, Washington Lee, or Stonewall Jackson.
And those are all done?
The Van Pelt vestibule is done. The Highland View restrooms are done. The Stonewall Jackson restrooms are done, except for we're waiting on partitions. It's a supply issue that we're waiting on. The restroom renovation has been started at Washington Lee, is not complete, but because of design issues, we actually are putting out for quick quote, may have happened this afternoon, to get new estimates for the steel for Washington Lee and Stonewall Jackson for the vestibules. So our plan is that by spring break, which is the first week in April, that we will have the Washington Lee restrooms completed. We'll have the vestibule completed at Stonewall Jackson. We'll have the bulletproof glass installed in a portion of the Washington Lee vestibule, with the additional plan to finish the vestibule at Washington Lee as soon as students leave, so that we don't have to do the welding while students are in the building.
Well, I would just like to see one slide that gives the council an update on where you are with compliance on each of the schools, what's been done, what's left to be done, and how much,
That's
money
the
to kind of...
update there, but as far as being compliant, we're nowhere close to being compliant.
We need to see that.
Yeah.
We need to see that as a responsible city, right?
Sure.
So,
I got a few things to ask. You mentioned bringing back the IB program.
Yes, sir.
And I know that was before your time, but I guess why did they let it go, and why are you bringing it back?
Well, why they let it go, I really can't speak to that, other than budget constraints that happened as a result of the recession. I think, currently, when we received an increase, when we received the last cut from locality, part of the reason was because we received an increase from the state. Well, in 2009, we received a decrease from the state, but we did not receive an increase from the city. And so we cut a lot of things during that time. I think we lost 50 employees. We downsized 50 employees, but IB was one of the programs that left. So that's the reason why I'm going to summarize and guess. I don't know that for a fact, but that's the way it's been told to me. But why we're bringing it back is we really need to expand our curriculum. We've got caught, and many schools in the state have got caught in the trap of being a test prep factory where we're preparing students to pass SOL tests, and we're not extending and expanding the curriculum the way that we want to. IB enables us to do that, and it is something that would separate us from any other school in Southwest Virginia, and very few schools across the state offer IB. AP is much more likely offering. IB is very different, and it also provides our students with something to add to their resume as they're applying for college. But the main reason is that it is a very enriched curriculum that does not focus on multiple choice. It focuses on solving real life problems.
Okay.
And one last thing, the other thing that we think is it's going to cost us something to implement that program, but if we have 4 students who stay with us or 4 students who come to us as a result of offering IB, the additional state funding that we would receive for that would pay for the increased cost.
Okay. So it does come with state funding?
No. Students come with state
Oh,
funding.
okay,
Students come with state funding.
I understand what you,
Sorry. So what we're saying is, we have students leave us because of better CTE offerings in other localities. We have students leave us because of better dual enrollment offerings at other localities. One of the things that we think that we can make us be unique is International Baccalaureate, which is a phenomenal program that is recognized across, not just across the country, but across the world. And we think it'll cost us about $27,000 annually to operate that program. We get about between $600 and $6,500 annually for every student from the state. And so a slight increase in enrollment because of that would actually offset the cost that it would cost to offer.
okay. You mentioned about CTE offerings. I'll skip down there. You said you're cutting the cosmetology program but adding nursing. Is that also, one, is that dual enrollment with the community college so that they can work towards an RN and not just be a CNA?
Yeah.
And 2, is that the only thing that you're doing in terms of CTE, or is there other things? Because I know a lot of people talk about that, about building the workforce, getting the building trades, things like that back at the high school level.
Right. Yeah, so the first year we will not be dual enrollment. Our goal is to work with the community college, and we have had those discussions. Their goal is to work with us to make that a dual enrollment program. We have brought back building trades, and this is our 2nd year of offering building trades, and we have a great instructor who's doing that, and we're seeing our enrollment grow there. You may remember that this year we are the first to offer and with the announcement that came out of Washington County yesterday, it's very timely, but we already are offering cybersecurity, but we're offering cybersecurity in agriculture. And the reason that we decided to add that program to our curriculum was with the CBD oil factory coming into Bristol. We know that there's going to be cybersecurity jobs, and so we're actually the only school division in the Commonwealth who is offering cybersecurity specifically related to agricultural industry. So we're doing that. When Governor McAuliffe a couple years ago talked about the 38,000 jobs that were available across the Commonwealth of Virginia in cybersecurity, we immediately began to offer cybersecurity, and that is also a dual enrollment program. And we are expanding and growing our CTE program every year with small changes, but this is a big one this year, moving from cosmetology to nursing.
Okay. So you mentioned cybersecurity and the text literary fund, the textbook fund, computers. Is that to expand the one-to-one to a different grade?
We're not expanding, there's just replacement costs for those annually, yes.
Okay. I didn't know if you were trying to get to a different grade with
and
that.
I'm going to tell you the wrong schedule, but Jeff Shelton has us on a great schedule. But once say for example, our seniors age out of their, or I guess it wouldn't be our seniors, say our juniors have had their computers for 5 years.
Yeah.
We then take those, refresh them, and we pass those down to elementary students because they don't need as sophisticated as machine as what our upperclassmen need. But so we recycle those back down to the lower grades, and I think that we're refreshing our computers at the very longest every 5 years for our one-to-one initiative. And we're down to 2nd grade with that now.
Some questions about salaries and the state funding. Did our composite index change this year?
Yeah, that is, I can't believe it, but our composite index went up. So we went from 0.29 to 0.30. And what that means generally is that the city should take on 30% of what it costs to fund public education. Last year, the city should have taken on 29%. The state should take on the remaining 70 or 71. However, I really anticipated for us to have another decrease in our composite index, which would have caused us to have additional state funding and a lower requirement locally. However, it didn't go that way. There are 3 factors that go into the composite index. Stop me whenever you want me to, but that is real property values, the adjusted gross income of your residents, and your local sales tax. And then they divide each of those by your population as a city and your enrollment as a school division. And they do that, and 50% of that is property values, 40% of that is adjusted gross income, and 10% of that is your local sales tax. And when they put all those together and compare it to other localities across the Commonwealth, for whatever reason, even though it's a 2-year look-back period, Bristol was evidently thriving 2 years ago, according to that composite index.
So, along with the salaries then, I think you said that some of that in the governor's budget, or at least as it's introduced, is there a salary increase
The
there?
governor did not recommend a salary increase in the first year of the biennium. He had a salary increase for teachers in the second year of the
Okay.
biennium. That's why in the first year of the biennium, we decided to focus on our hourly employees. Now, we get to the conference budget, and the conference budget has a 2% raise for teachers in the first year of the biennium. We were paying for that with at-risk add-on funding, that increase, because one of the things you can use that for is teacher retaining and recruiting teachers. However, that money will be available now in a different way. We won't change our salary scale, or at least I won't recommend to our school board that we change our salary scale, because we know that teachers are going to get another 2% raise next year.
Okay, because that was one of my things, is if that's in there typically is the SOQ positions, and you've got other positions that you either come to us or use the
Right.
at-risk money doesn't have as many strings to help
So
fund that.
with the 2% salary increase, we have about I'm rounding, about 400 employees. About 200 of our employees fall under the SOQs. One of the things that we've been trying to advocate for in Richmond is to get them to recognize that the standards of quality are really not standards of quality. I don't know what their standards of, but it's not quality. But every school, when they reduce the support cap and all those other things, the locality and the federal dollars that we have pay for half of our employees, and the state pays for the other half of our employees. Actually, the state pays for 70% of half of our employees. The locality picks up the other 30% and 100% of a remaining number of employees, and the Fed's picking up the other 100%.
Okay.
Clear as mud.
And then when you were talking about the security, last year it was the elementary schools, and I was up at Highland last week to first part of Read Across America, and I think they were looking for the latch mechanisms that it looked like everything was pretty well installed, so there's some progress. But you're talking about doors at I guess the middle school and the high school, door handles, and security there. And just thinking through both of those, there's a number of doors. One, it's not like the elementary schools, they're smaller and a little more contained. So how do you go about, like the high school, there's so many doors they're really securing that?
Well, so what we hope to do is, if you go into the main entrance, what I'll call the main entrance, there's like 8 or 9 doors that you can go in right there. We plan to not make those doors accessible from the outside. And if you go on down towards the cafeteria, you're walking beside Mr. Collins's office and then the main office. We're going to open a door up there in the main office, turn the secretary, the receptionist's desk around, put a wall behind her, the vestibule behind her. So once you come into the building, that's where the secure area will be. Right now, once you get in those 8 doors that I was talking about, you have free run of the school. And when that was built in 1957, that was a great design. It was open, it was accessible, but that's not what the intent is now. And so those doors would lose their outside pulls, and they would only be used from the inside going out.
In the middle school?
The middle school is a split foyer, and we're really struggling with how we can create a vestibule there. Some of the things that we're looking at doing is completely moving the office from where it is now to another area where we can make it more secure. But if you've been on either side of the entrances that you go into Virginia Middle School, you've got a choice. You go up or down. And you go up, you go to the office, you go down, you go to classrooms. And we're really struggling with a good design that makes that safe but also accessible to our visitors.
Thank you.
The one thing I will say about the doorknobs, a prime example is if you look at the doorknob on this door, that's not a handicap accessible doorknob. If you look on the doorknob behind Miss Spradlin, that is a handicap accessible doorknob. We have a lot of 1957 doorknobs at all of our schools, and that's just part of the steps to getting ourselves. Virginia High School has elevators and ramps and all those other things that makes it partially accessible, restrooms, but there's a lot of things at Virginia High and Virginia Middle School that are not accessible, and we're trying to chip away at those every little piece that we can.
So I had a question going back to the actual $214,000 increase request. So I know you had said that some of it would be used for school bus purchases and some capital projects at Virginia High School and Virginia Middle School. So kind of as a as a two-part question, which you might have touched on a little bit, which projects at Virginia High School and Virginia Middle School would be your top priorities? And then since this wouldn't just be a one-time $214,000, what would you be doing year over year with it?
So we actually have a capital improvement plan that goes very specifically out 5 years. And then we have some other projects that are even that we're looking at down the road. And so this is just some of the projects that we have lined out to go next year. We have additional projects on that capital improvement plan that we plan to take care of out of our normal appropriation. These are the ones that according to our capital improvement team that we feel are the most pressing at this time. If you'll remember back in the summer, Mr. Reeves and I worked, I don't know how many of you guys were involved in that. We had a transformer blow up at Virginia High School. We were completely out of power for 4 or 5 days at Virginia High School because they don't just sell those at Lowe's. I mean, they're pretty expensive pieces of equipment. Had that happened during the school year, we would have had to close school down for those days to get that transformer in. A couple weeks later, we had another transformer do the very same thing at Van Pelt. It was a little bit smaller and they had easier access to that. But if anybody would like to go to the cellar at Virginia High School, they have what our maintenance guys call the 3 wise men. They are the original transformers that were put in 1957. We're not even sure how, once we replace them, they'll even come out. But we're working with BVU to have an infrared test done on those to see how much of their life is left. But those are going to be very expensive to replace. But we have no idea to know how much longer they anticipate lasting. But as I said earlier, our 1974 transformer blew. We had a 1954 transformer blow over the summer. And we have a lot of issues that we know about, and we have a lot of issues that could sneak up on us and catch us off guard as well.
Can we get a copy of that?
You should have a copy.
Where? Email?
All right, do we have any other questions for right now?
Mr. Wingard, I would say too, you have a copy of not only the presentation, but the budget book is right.
All right, if there's no other questions, thank you very much for presenting to us.
Thank you very much.
All right. Next is item 6 on our agenda, which is downtown parking improvements. Staff report.
Council, before Mr. McCulloch begins, I think that Ms. Ross left a few minutes ago, but she wanted me to express her support for these changes that Wallace is proposing for the for downtown parking. And I know I'd sent you an email earlier today that I received from Ken Moniak, who supports this as well. We met with many of the downtown businesses that will be affected by this, I believe 2 weeks ago, week and a half ago.
Yeah.
And all of them are extremely supportive of the changes that we're proposing.
Yeah, just to, I'll let you know who was at that meeting. It was on the 27th, the library, Bristol Hotel, birthplace of country music, Bristol Station Brewery, Esposito Law, the post office, and then 39 Piedmont. I've talked to Blackbird Bakery as well. There's overwhelmingly positive support for it. The Traffic Safety Commission met to discuss it as well, and I guess moved it on to you guys to make a decision on that. So I guess I just wanted to start here at, let's see, I'm going to figure this new, sorry. I'm trying to figure this thing out. Well, anyway, there's a way to get to a pointer, but it's not coming up for me. The intersection there at Piedmont and Cumberland, what we want to try to do there is convert that to a four-way stop. We did a traffic study for it. The traffic counts were so low that it didn't qualify for a signal. If there weren't a signal there, we wouldn't be able to get one because there's just not enough traffic there. And so we feel like a four-way stop makes a lot of sense for that intersection. The ones further down that we did at Moore Street in Cumberland has worked well. We've had no issues with that. The traffic flow seems to work really well with that. And part of the reason we wanted to do that on there is that we want to go to diagonal parking there in front of the Blackbird Bakery. And so to do that, we had to get rid of, there's a left turn lane, an extra lane in there. So if we drop it down to just 2 lanes going in either direction and get rid of the left turn lane, that it gives us some extra room to allow that diagonal parking. And so it starts to increase the amount of parking fairly substantially in those areas, so that we can up the parking in that area. The reason I did in front of the bakery on the south side of Cumberland, and then on the opposite side, on the there across from Kerr Boswell, is just because of the entrances. If you've got an entrance, you reduce the number of spaces that you can squeeze in there, and so there are more entrances there, and plus we put some down in front of the library as well. Go back. So you can see down in front of the library, we added some there also. What we're doing with the library is we are moving the bus stop, the drop-off area, to around the corner on Good Street, and so it seems to make more sense. We were able to get that diagonal parking where there is no permanent parking, so it ups that parking in that area. And then further down, we've also looked at, down here in front of the Burger Bar and Quaker Steak and Lube, it's more just to try to help that traffic flow. We've got that one, currently there's that one dedicated right turn lane that's far to the right that is difficult to get into. And so we're going to drop a lane. It's really just a little short piece there at State Street. So we're going to drop that and have a straight through and left, and then a dedicated right. And so currently there are 3 turn lanes there. And so one to turn left, one to go straight, and one to go right. So we're just going to combine some of those. We feel like it's going to improve that corner there. We get 1 extra space. We also get there at the corner of Good and Piedmont, we're going to bulb that area out. That tends to help in terms of traffic flow there too. It kind of helps slow people down a little bit. So overall, what we get on the southern section of Piedmont, we increased the number of spaces by 20 spaces. On the north end, we increased the number of spaces by 11. And then here, over in front of, on Cumberland, in front of the hotel and Birthplace of Country Music, we are proposing, there it is. So we can, what we want to do there is, currently it was kind of marked incorrectly. We want to make a loading and unloading zone. They're directly in front of the hotel, both for the Country Music Museum and the hotel. So they can unload buses and then cars can still get past them. And then run diagonal parking there, and then a sidewalk in back of both of those, and plus add some handicap. The diagonal allows us to add some handicap spaces, which are kind of necessary in that area. There's a little more cost to this because the edge of the parking has to be shifted over another 10 feet plus the sidewalk put back in. And so there at the Veterans Park, we shove it over into the park just a little bit, to increase that. And then same thing on Lee Street, we shoved that over a little bit. And so there is an increase overall in that of 33 spaces in that general area. These are going to be more expensive to install just simply because it requires more work on the removal of sidewalk and expansion of the pavement. And then Lee Street, as we go down here, we're going to convert this to one-way. We want to make, what we're going to do is turn Winston Alley into, it's currently one-way for that section behind the hotel, but we're going to turn that into two-way, make it two ways, so that when we convert that to one-way through there, people can get in and out a little easier. There was some objection to, Brown Edwards had some concerns about cutting off their entrance here. And so for making it two-way would make it easier for them to get in and out. Plus, the benefit to Brown Edwards is they're going to get at least 4 spaces additional to what they've got there by that change, and then they would then access off of Winston's Alley. The other thing that we do down here at the end, we're going to add some handicap, and then again do the bulb out, which kind of shortens the street crossing. Again, it's going to be one way starting from Country Music Way down, and then 5th Street over in Tennessee is also one way as well. Then Good Street. One of the benefits here is that there's just a lot of these spaces that were never marked, especially out when you're out towards the end out here, and then as you move over, some of those were just not marked, and so the advantage to us here is that there's an increase of 25 spaces, and all it costs us here is just paint to make that work. Now I know, I believe Mr. Mumpower had a question about the possibility of diagonal spaces in this area here, below Sullins Alley. It could be done, but it not only is the cost of expanding the pavement and replacing the sidewalk, but we'd have to do a retaining wall as well. It would gain us 10 spaces over and above the spaces that we're proposing with this. So there is an increase, but the cost for space kind of goes up, is the only difference there. I think that's basically it. Some of the issues that I wanted to point out that we'll probably have to address is that we probably need to limit vehicle size. And what I would want to do is to make it 21 feet long by 7 feet wide. So what that would allow to be able to park there is like an F-350 crew cab with a 6.5 foot bed would be able to park in that space. But if you had an 8 foot bed, and I think even the F-150 is a crew cab if they even make that one, they wouldn't be able to park in there because they're just too long. And so we want to limit the size because we're, especially on Cumberland, I know on Piedmont, we're kind of scrunching it down there. In front, so that if they stick out too far, it's going to create problems. The other thing we'd want to make sure is somebody doesn't park like a dually in there, which it's got no business in those kind of parking spaces anyway. But so we might want to think about restricting that. The other thing we just need to give some thought to, I think, is about whether or not we restrict overnight parking. And the reason that we'd want to do this is to allow for street sweeping, to allow for snow removal. And now the exception to this might be some of the bars. I know they say somebody gets a little too much to drink that they may have to leave their car and go home. The only restriction might be there if they're pretty regular about that, maybe they need to take a cab to the bar as well as leave, so it's a different story. So, and then the other thing we want to wanted to think about is whether we allow parking by permit, like Tennessee allows that, and I think they're charging $300 a year. It allows somebody to leave it in space for up to 72 hours without touching it, I guess. But it's only in certain areas that they allow that parking to be. They don't allow it on State Street and some of the side streets, but some of the back streets, they do allow that. But again, it's by permit only. It looks like, in talking to Ellen, that we could get CBDG funding to pay for a lot of this. Actually, most of it, she thinks. And so what I would propose that we do is go ahead and do Good Street, because that's, like I say, that's essentially free. All we have to do is put some paint on there, and we get 25 spaces right off the bat. And I think the next we would want to do is focus on Piedmont Avenue and South Lee Street, south of Country Music Way. Now on Piedmont, we would probably leave this piece at the end. Down here, some of this stuff on Winston's Alley, some of that improved, and I forgot to mention that we're talking about trying to change the travel path coming from Good Street into Winston's Alley, trying to slow some of that traffic down to keep them from whipping across the intersection. They'd be forced to get out on Piedmont and then turn back. And so that'll kind of clean things up, I think, as far as traffic flow. So anyway, that's kind of where we are. If you've got any questions, I'll be glad to answer those.
All right, we'll go ahead and open it up to questions for a minute.
Well, my only question is your Piedmont, is that going to be expensive?
And this is an estimate that we put together, and it's based on our city contract. So if we didn't do the work, the Piedmont Avenue work would be just the north end, north of Winston's Alley, and including the library. It would be about $60,000. We think we could probably do that for much less. But again, CBDG funding is available. We're pretty sure. I would propose to do this next fiscal year, the Cumberland Street and the South Lee Street piece.
I was just going to say, I think this is great. So the total creation of 108 new parking spots?
Yeah, actually, we added a few handicap spaces, and so we lost about 3, but somewhere in that range. And we may be able to tweak it and gain some more, but it's initially, we're over 100. So we're almost doubling the parking in each one of those areas where we're adding.
I mean, I just think this is the type of creative thinking and analyzing we need, especially in downtown. I think everyone talks about a parking problem. For a long time, there's been a discussion of a parking garage somewhere. I don't know if it'd be Virginia or Tennessee. And what's a 200 or 300 spot garage? $10 million or more. I don't know, just throwing that out there. So it seems like the cost is minimal with most of this, especially if there's some CDBG funding.
Yes.
And I also counted, according to these, about 4 new crosswalks. A couple around Blackbird Bakery, one behind kind of Quaker Steak.
Yes, there are areas that really ought to be crosswalks now, and so that's what we're kind of.
I think that's great. I see a lot of pedestrian traffic myself when I'm in downtown on a Friday night or Saturday night, especially in those areas near Blackbird, near Quaker Steak. And I think we would only expect to have more people come into downtown over the next few years. What's the timeline? I know you're asking for us, I guess, authorization to move forward with final design and actually begin construction.
Well, I think immediately we'd probably, I mean, as soon as the weather breaks, we would go ahead and do the paint striping on Good Street. Like I say, that's essentially free. All we have to do is buy some paint, get our guys out there and stripe that out, and we get 25 spaces. That's kind of a no-brainer. And then we could go ahead and have the design ready to maybe, you know, if it depends on the funding, but we could have it ready to go late summer or the fall.
I was just thinking about some of the streets, well, really all the streets, of course, here on Piedmont, and then the other on Cumberland and Lee Street. Very busy areas, usually the third week or so of September, or now second week. So we wouldn't want to have a bunch of construction going on at that time.
No, we'd have to either make sure we got it done prior to Rhythm and Roots or start it right after.
So I know you'd mentioned, say 31 spaces on Piedmont, 33 at the BCM, 25 on Good Street. What was the number on Lee Street? I don't think I heard you say that.
Okay. The south end of Lee Street, there's existing 10, and we would add 16. So a total of 26.
Okay. And so you said the timeline, you'd probably start in late fall, and you'd prioritize doing, obviously, Good Street first, but then you do Piedmont Avenue after that?
Yeah, I mean, we could go probably, Lee Street has already been kind of talked about with some people. I'm not sure whether we do Piedmont or Lee first, or we could maybe run them concurrently.
I have a couple questions about the crosswalk. Would it just be regular painted crosswalks you'd be putting in, or would it be anything kind of special like you see where they've done stuff in Abingdon, they'll put in brick crosswalks and all that, or is it just regular crosswalks?
We would probably, you know, unless somebody wants to do something different, we could just do regular crosswalks. I know they make you can do like a thermoplastic brick crosswalk, but the problem with any of those kind of things is that when you run the snowplows across them, they can sometimes cause some damage. And then the concrete ones, like we've got at the fire station in downtown, they're definitely, you know, you start to add some cost and stuff. We can do that, but it does add cost.
I'll say one thing that I really like is right here on this one, where you're going from Good Street to Winston Alley. You'll have people who are walking from Quaker Stake, and that's just a big open area, and they're just wandering effectively in the road, you know, at all hours. So I think that's going to be a benefit for safety as far as keeping people from almost getting hit.
And actually, I should probably say for that stuff on Winston's Alley, we would need to sit down with Quaker Stake and Lube and then the other property owners to make sure that what we're doing won't interfere with their access. What it does is it gives them actually more room in the interior area of their parking lots. So it kind of expands it out there, you know, that area around the G, it pushes it out further. So it gives them some more interior space, but we'd also need to make sure that, you know, whatever they did didn't get on the sidewalk and whatever in there. So I think it can help a lot in terms of pedestrian friendly areas and then traffic flow.
I had one more question. Back on if you go back a slide where you're looking at the intersection of Piedmont and Cumberland.
Okay.
If you can't get it, it's okay. There, well, there we are. Okay. So if we're looking at this map and we're coming from the bottom of the map up, that's coming down the hill.
Yes.
Correct? So you said you'd want to take out the traffic light and make it a four-way stop there.
Yes.
Do you have any concern, or do you have any numbers on how fast people are coming down that hill?
Well, I mean, you think about it, currently there's a stoplight, so they have to stop when they get to the bottom of the hill, whatever percentage of that time. And so when I checked with Jay, we looked at accidents, we haven't had any significant number of those coming down through there.
That's the only thing about this plan I don't like, that four-way stop. People don't know how to deal with a four-way stop. They're a disaster.
Well,
I mean, it's just like somebody moves up, they think it's their time, then they're trying to beat the other person, and I think if you put a four-way stop there, you're gonna have some trouble out of that there.
Well, when we first did the one at Moore and Cumberland, yeah, initially people weren't recognizing what was going on, but I think now, I don't know that, and I can check, but I'm not aware of any accidents that we've had there. Initially, people would kind of run through it, but the plan would be to flash it, once we put the infrastructure in, is to turn it to flash red, all four directions, so that they kind of get a heads up that there's been a change.
Why can't you just leave the light and just reprogram it?
Well, it's long-term, it's just maintenance for us. Like I say, the four-way stops that we've got now are working. We seriously, we haven't had any issues with them.
Do any of them have the traffic count that one's got?
More in Cumberland is going to be very similar, because of Cumberland has the majority of the traffic. Piedmont is the lesser of the two.
So let me ask you, so I've been on the Transportation Commission much
Yes.
longer than I've been on City Council. So I know I've seen some of the intersections where we've taken out lights and just had four-way stops, like, Randolph Street and Van Street. You know, we took that out several years ago. Kind of like Mr. Mumpower said, would it impede your plan for parking if you left, just in theory, if you left the traffic light?
Not necessarily. Well, I mean, I guess we could make it. One of the reasons we got rid of it was so we could get rid of that left turn lane. But if you go ahead and just get rid of the left turn lane coming up, it could work. Obviously we could make it work, but really there's no point in paying for the signal if you think about the other intersections, and I can get those numbers for you. I really don't think we've had any significant problems.
Well, I just get concerned with an area like that because there's so many people around that corner at Blackbird and on certain, there's just pedestrians everywhere, and then you got a four-way stop, and somebody's trying to knuckle somebody else out and move fast, and I think it's going to be a problem waiting to happen. That would make me nervous about a four-way stop because there's so many people there that are coming and going.
Just a follow-up question from the mayor's point. On the next slide, back down sort of near State Street, we were talking about crosswalks, and he was mentioning, like in Abingdon outside the Barter Theater, they've got a reflective piece in the middle that's flashing when there's people walking across. Most of the crosswalks are at intersections or where there's stop signs or stop lights, but the one crosswalk crossing, like connecting Quaker Steak to the Burger Bar, crossing Piedmont there, the only thing I've observed, and this is just my observation, folks coming from Tennessee on 7th Street, making that green light as it's turning yellow, they're speeding up. So I do feel like sometimes traffic going from Tennessee into Virginia is pretty fast, so maybe something there to kind of alert folks about. I know we have a crosswalk there now, and sometimes it's tough to get across.
Sure.
Was my thought.
We looked at the possibility of making that a three-way stop. However, there was concern with backup from the Tennessee side, and we thought we'd just kind of do it this way and take a look at it and see if it created issues, and then, we can obviously put signs there to try to identify that as people start driving up through there.
Is there a reason that's on the south side of Good Street and not the north side? If you put it on the other side where you got that bulb out, one, it would be a smaller walk, people would be in the road, and two, it would give you, if you're coming from Tennessee, about 15, 20 foot to see somebody before you got to them.
That's a possibility. One of the things that we did here is we left this area striped so that buses, when they come down through here, would be able to turn over into this area for loading and unloading. And so, we can certainly take a look at that. It's a good suggestion in that it does shorten the path over what's already there. And like I said, that's something we can certainly look at.
So the other question I had, now that you're talking about these pedestrian sidewalks and crosswalks, which are good, can you kind of do an inventory, because there's some other areas like that are a problem, and that's specifically down at the farmer's market. On Saturday morning, that's another problem waiting to happen. There are so many people trying to go back and forth across the street, but there's no crosswalk, right? So there's people parking on both sides. They're trying to get from one side of that back to their car. So there's several spots along State Street in some places that need a pedestrian walkway. Like, we've done a pretty decent job from Piedmont up to the train station, but now that we got the hotel going in down that interstate, you got the farmer's market with all those people. I saw 2 or 3 ladies down there about got hit one Saturday morning because somebody's trying to turn out or into that parking lot, and there's no pedestrian sidewalk to handle that. So, and there's probably some others down on Good and so forth that could probably think about if people are parking on that side of the street and they're wanting to go down to State Street. How would they cross?
Right.
Over and go down like Stoneman Family Drive or some of those roads, right?
We did show this crosswalk, which it was already proposed by the Sessions Hotel. And so we're gonna have to figure out some signage for this just to identify.
That's up on the backside.
Yeah, this is
that
coming
across-
from Commonwealth.
Oh, yeah, Tri-Cities Blueprints right there. Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
just up the hill. And they installed a new parking lot across the street up in this area. And so I guess that's a side, crosswalk to get their people over there.
So I have one more question from me. Back on Piedmont, you said it would add 31 spots, right?
I believe so.
So we all know that Piedmont is a very long, very wide bridge. Is there any concern with the added weight that would always be?
I've had that
in
question
there?
a lot. Initially, I'm saying no, it doesn't. I just don't think it will. I've sent an email to our structural engineer just to confirm that, but I really don't believe it will. Because the added weight of those cars is just not significant compared to the weight load. Granted, I know we've got problems with it, but it's for things like fire trucks that have a concentrated load in a short span. We're spreading these out over the length of it. But I am going to confirm that just to make sure, because you're not the only one to ask that question.
Yeah, go back to that Carter Family Way there that you had on that previous slide. Yeah, yeah, right there. So right there is another place where you don't have a pedestrians, you're gonna have all that parking on right and left side of Good Street, have a crosswalk right there where they can get down Carter Family Way and get down to State Street is probably needed right there.
Okay.
So, where's it gonna start?
But in that same area right there is gonna be a ramp coming off of that parking lot, coming down by the motel.
That's over on this side though, isn't it?
Well, that's probably where you need the crosswalk is.
I'm talking about the people parking
No, I
in
know,
the
you're
library
talking
down
along
here.
Good Street.
Yeah,
just
Good
going
Street down
across the
further
top
toward
of
the library, down in there's what I was talking.
But your point about near the farmer's market, probably where that ramp is going over to,
Pretty close, yeah.
Killing Time, right in there, because every other block, at least 500 and 600 block, have a crosswalk in the middle of the street as well as at the intersections. They've got those bricks, so you don't have to go all the way to the end of the block. When you get down this side, you don't have that anymore.
We're actually supposed to meet with Tennessee to discuss crosswalks on State Street. We thought they had a plan, and I think they thought, because we had talked to them a while back about it, or they had called us, so we thought they had a plan. We had a meeting the other day, and they looked at us and asked us where the plan was, and so there was a bit of a mix-up. So we're going to try to figure out what's going on there. But I know they're talking about adding some crosswalks on State Street.
But their idea to create parking is take out sidewalks.
Pardon?
I said their idea of creating parking is take out sidewalks.
Yeah. So one question I had is if you make Winston Alley two-way, and you may want to go back, is particularly at the corner of Winston Alley and Moore, if you're traveling west, is there going to be an issue of sight if you come out behind that building
Moore
that's
Street,
Bristol?
there's a little bit of a concern there, yes. And we may have to, we're gonna have to take a look at that. I mean, we could easily make that it would be, I guess, a three-way stop since it's a,
Yeah, you don't need to, yeah, it's one way, but, yeah, that, to me, if you make it two-way, I mean, coming right there, that's, to look around that corner.
yeah.
Would be an issue. The four-way stop, I don't particularly have an issue. I mean, I think people would have to get used to it, but being downtown a lot and other places in town where we've taken those lights out over the years, people seem to function well with it. I think it's a cost savings. I'm glad to see the crosswalks, because being downtown a lot more than there used to be, I noticed that there aren't crosswalks where there should be.
Right.
Or people just cross, they're not painted there. I also am glad to see handicap spaces, because I've noticed that there's not as much, well, I don't know that there's any on-street handicap.
Right.
And Tennessee side does have some on the side streets, so, and there's none on State Street either, that's handicap.
Yep. Parallel spaces are not really ADA compatible because there's no real unloading zone. And so the perpendicular spaces really lend themselves well to the handicap spaces.
Yeah. So, I mean, to me, and your idea too, of the things that cost the least, just some paint and restriping things. I mean, I think that's almost a no-brainer to get some extra parking downtown. And what I like about this is these spaces are near the businesses, and so it gets people that need to be there in the business. They can come, they can park. If you want to stay longer, and I don't know that people recognize that, but the lot at Cumberland Square and the lot over across from the jail that used to have those pay boxes don't anymore. So you can park there, you know, all day. So if you needed a longer term solution, that's where you can park. And those during the day, they're nowhere near as full as in the evening, I'll put it that way. And they have a lot more capacity. And I think adding this adds capacity closer to the business. There's still parking away, you know, and our problem is, as people take advantage of this, is enforcement so that people don't park there and stay there all day. But over time, as it puts more stress on the capacity, I think that's when you start looking at a parking system, because I think the first year I was on council, they did one of those studies, and to make it work, you had to pay for all of the spaces in downtown so that somebody would have an incentive not to park on State Street for free, but stay in a garage. So I don't think we're quite there yet. Maybe down the road, it might be something you have to look at, but in the short run, I think this is a good solution, and I appreciate you bringing it here.
One of the concerns you mentioned about the enforcement, if Tennessee's given permits for $300 to allow long-term parking or the three-day parking or whatever, then a lot of people who aren't going to want to pay for that are going to come on the Virginia side. And so we probably need to think about some way to do enforcement. Anyway, just, and that requires a paid position, but maybe we recoup some of that money with the fines.
So I understand there's some spots downtown in different locations where years ago somebody cut an agreement to have that as their paid spot. You know, it could be a business, could be a private business or whatever. So my position on that is got to be open for all or open to none. So what's our policy on that? Because we can't have just a handful of people that, you know, have the privilege of having some spots that they've somehow cut a deal and that's theirs and they paid for it, where other people might want it and they don't have that opportunity. So we haven't talked about that, right? But we're going to have to bring that up, and it needs to be addressed to make it fair because we do have people that live downtown, right? Which they might want to buy a spot if they're a resident, right? But we got to talk about that with the businesses and the residents to see what's the right solution there.
Yeah, the thing that Tennessee has done, where it's like I say, it's a $300 a year permit, and they have to renew it annually. That seems to be a good model. We could, if we're doing the same thing as nobody has any incentive to go one place or the other. They just pick what's convenient for them.
And I could say, Tennessee's, because it's right there near my work, it does not guarantee you a spot. It just guarantees that you will not get ticketed if you leave your car there all day.
Exactly.
And it's only it's off of the main, it's off of State Street. It's fairly pushed back. It's not everywhere either. So, you know, I don't know, like I say, I think there's plenty enough parking on our side that if you get a block off of State Street, you could park in Cumberland Square Park. There's enough parking right now.
Yes.
People could park there all day and it not, you know, it's enforcing the things that are closer to the businesses to where you don't have somebody pull up at your front door and sit there all day.
Right.
I guess, so you said overall, most businesses you've spoken with are overall positive with
Yes.
these?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
Brown Edwards the only one that really kind of expressed concerns. They didn't want to give up their entrance onto Lee Street. And it's because of access. They didn't want people, because it was one way on Winston's. So if we make it two-way, I think that problem kind of goes away.
As far as, sorry, go ahead.
I was about to cut you off. Go ahead.
Okay. You know, well, we talked with Believe in Bristol earlier about just how incredible downtown is, and as far as, you know, the permit thing goes, you know, I don't know if we'd have to have more discussion on that or not, but I guess I just don't ultimately want anyone who's coming downtown to not come downtown because, you know, they don't know how the permit system works, they don't have a permit. I think we want to make it overall easy for people to come downtown, that downtown is open for business.
And I think what we're doing now is it's 2-hour parking, it's free, there's nothing required. But if you want to park longer, that would be where the permit would come in.
And then the overall amount of spaces adding over 100 right here, I think this is huge. So good job.
Thank you.
All right, very good. Well, thank you very much for
All right.
answering our questions. We have a few people who've signed up for public comment on this item. First person is William Fry. He left. Michael Pollard.
I signed up for that too.
I'm going in order. We'll get to you. We'll get you.
I'm sorry, I
We'll get
thought
you.
said 2 people. I
No, no,
didn't
no.
hear right.
No, we'll get you.
Thank you. My name is Michael Pollard. I live at 101 Ashley Drive. I have 2 questions. One, on sheet 1, is that a section of Piedmont, what's the speed limit on that? It is 25? Okay. What's the sight distance for someone pulling out on Good Street? Is that sufficient sight distance for somebody pulling out with traffic that does not stop?
That's one of the things we're trying to push that forward so that they can see a little bit. The thing about with crosswalks is the stop bar has to be 4 feet behind it. So in most all cases, they're going to have to pull up to the stop bar. And then when there's nobody crossing, they're going to have to pull forward and look. And that's the thing we may, again, look at doing a 3-way stop every time it's a problem.
You're going to have a hard time seeing anybody coming from the left. Well, if there are people in the parking spots. The other main concern is on sheet 5. Good Street does not appear to have a marked center line. And particularly at the top there, it looks particularly dramatic, where people may be playing dodge cars trying to get through that spot. Okay. There's a lot of other areas that I have that concern with as well, where streets aren't striped, and you have to be polite with people that are coming the other direction. And sometimes it can get rather dangerous, and I don't want to create any additional concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person is Justin Brown.
Hello, my name is Justin Brown, and I own the Bristol Tattoo Company downtown, as well as the organizer of State Street Tattoo Fest. I'd like to add, as my business is on the Tennessee side, so I don't pay Virginia taxes, the Tattoo Fest sold over 200 room nights downtown a single weekend and also brought over 1,600 people to the downtown during the event. So we tried our best to spread the love and the taxes onto both sides of the street. So if you don't want to move into next door to a tattoo shop, I guess you don't like making money. But I digress. I'm here to show my support for the changes that you guys are looking to make at the downtown. As we know, there is a big parking issue, and it has been talked about a lot. And I think these the changes to diagonal is a great idea. The couple of things that I would like to point out that I think might be good things to address. As it is adding a whole lot of parking, there is still, and a few of you had mentioned it and was mentioned in your presentation as well, with the enforcement. I don't remember exactly how much the parking ticket is on the Virginia side, but if I'm not mistaken, it's very cheap. And there's nobody to enforce it. So therefore, you're adding all these spots. Again, with Tennessee having the parking pass, they're just going to be moving to the Virginia side and basically hogging up the spots. I personally feel like, and I've talked about this a lot, is we don't have a parking problem downtown. We have parking issues. A lot of businesses and employees will park on State Street for 8 to 10 hours a day. There's no enforcement, so they have no reason to leave. Tennessee is a $16 ticket. I'll happily pay $16 every couple of months instead of paying a $300 parking pass. And the same thing, I would feel the same exact way about the Virginia side getting a parking pass. I don't agree that that parking pass is a good idea because there's no enforcement. In the 3.5 years that I've been open, I have had one client receive a ticket, and they were parked in front of my store on State Street for a good few hours, and I paid the ticket for them. But $16 in 4 years, I will more than happily pay. As far as the enforcement goes, this would also go back to Country Music Way with the, I don't know if there's a deal with the hotel on being able to use that, but that is public parking, and they cone it off for valet parking. There does need to be areas, and I guess that would be like you guys were saying about Cumberland Square Park, maybe there needs to be a little bit more advertisement as well as lighting and security for more permanent residents and employees and things, so they have a safe way of going over there. And as far as the crosswalks are concerned, I've been a huge advocate for the crosswalks, especially at 5th and Lee and State Street. There was nothing there when I moved in. I think a great idea would be the crosswalks that we have in front of, would I be able to have a couple more seconds? The crosswalks that we have in front of Paramount, and I believe it's about in front of Uncle Sam's. They're the humps. I'd invite any one of you to come down and look and watch the cars. As they're going towards the Bristol sign, the second they come over the Paramount hump, they gas it. And then the second they're coming into downtown, they slam on their brake right there, and then it's nice and easy. So that might be one of the solutions for more towards the new Sessions Hotel in that general vicinity, as well as, I know we have one in front of Paramount and everything, but most definitely maybe closer towards the museum offices to allow them to slow down as they're coming into town, and that could help with the traffic. Excellent. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. Ms. Marnie is up to bat.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, my name is Nancy Marnie. I'm a resident of the city of Bristol, Virginia. I'm a property owner. I pay my tax. There are two issues I would like to inquire about in this presentation. One of them is on Piedmont, right there at Cumberland Street, where Wildbird, whatever it is, bakery is, I always want to call it Wildflower, and that's wrong, Blackbird. If you put in diagonal parking, then this means that when people get into their cars to leave, they're going to be backing out into the traffic. And if that becomes a four-way stop, then there won't even be the lull of having the street light there so that all of a sudden you can get out. My concern would be on the diagonal parking, you're backing out into traffic. And I don't give a rip how good a driver you are, and I'm a good driver. There's always that blind spot when you're trying to look over your shoulder to back out. And I think that if you find you have a four-way stop at that intersection, now I'm through there every day at least once. I know that. You know, you all keep trying to reinvent the wheel, and all you ever come up with is a flat tire. I've watched all of these streets, the evolution of the stoplights being put up twice and taken down twice, such as at the corner of Lee Street and State Street. There's been a stoplight there at least twice, and I think it's 3 times. They put it up, leave it, and then take it down, and then they have to put it back up again. I mean, I've watched all of this stuff. I watched Winston Alley go from 2-way to 1-way because you couldn't see to get out on Moore Street, and you can't move buildings back. They're built to the sidewalk. All right, the first issue was the diagonal parking on Piedmont. I think you're getting ready to set up a very dangerous situation myself by putting in a 4-way stop there and then having people pull in. Fine, that's all right, but it's getting out that is the problem. At least when you parallel park, you're backing into the curb, not out into the traffic. Now, secondly, I did not hear and I did not understand what you said about putting in a loading area in front of the Sessions Hotel and the museum. I didn't hear what you said there. No, I'm talking about the one there for the Bristol Hotel and the that I didn't hear what you said there.
The intent there is not to have parking directly in front of the hotel on their side, but to have that as a loading and unloading zone.
At the front door?
Yes, loading and unloading
Why don't they put it on Winston Alley?
I think he's saying a loading for people.
I'm talking about people and buses.
Oh, I thought you were talking about hauling stuff, food.
That's in the back.
Oh, okay. All right, so just at the front door to the hotel and at the front door to the museum, that people would just pull up and stop and get out and unload, and then the car would go off into the Wild Blue Yonder behind the fire hall. Okay. Well, I wasn't clear. I couldn't hear what you were saying. So you're going to take that sidewalk out?
No, the sidewalk would be taken out opposite the hotel and shove the parking, the diagonal parking up into the area.
Into that triangle?
Yes.
Oh, don't do that.
We're not going to take your Christmas tree in. Not yet.
Don't get into the triangle. Don't, you do, and you, well, don't get into that. Gentlemen, let me bring up one comment here that should have been made a very long time ago.
30 seconds, please.
There should be food for the soul and the eyes. Both. Everybody needs food for the soul and the eyes. And when you start messing with the few green spots that we still have left, you're asking for trouble. Don't mess with that triangle. Leave it alone. Leave it alone. When that hotel was built, they knew what that situation was. They knew they had no parking. They knew what that was down there. I have no sympathy with that at all. I don't give a rip whether it was $20 million or $900 million. They knew this. And I don't think the city of Bristol, Virginia, quit rolling your fingers at me or I'll wrap them around your neck.
I don't want to have to gavel you, though.
All right. But I think you're making a very bad mistake in cutting into that triangle. Now, that triangle gives a lot of people a lot of pleasure, and it serves a visual purpose. Now, if that hotel doesn't like it there, let them go somewhere else. They knew all of this when that was done. And the city ended up giving them 75 places back there behind the fire hall.
Can I ask Mr.
I'm
McCullough?
one of the ones who will not be going back to town. I think you all are making a big mess myself. You're creating a very dangerous, big, fat mess.
Thank you.
One thing Ms. Marnie brought up that made me think about deliveries and unloading. Other than the Bristol Hotel, and even when they have deliveries, that they basically, if that was two-way, would they still be able to get their deliveries in there? And does anybody else use Winston Alley in that way?
I don't believe anybody else really uses it for that. The full width there is about 30 feet. You really only need about 18 to 20 for a two-way street. So they have enough room right up next to the back of the hotel to do loading and unloading.
Wow. Okay, but the way now, when you go through there, they can unload and you can get another vehicle, but they tend to park more out in the road, I guess, than what you would say they should. Would that be correct?
Yeah, probably, except when they're unloading and unloading, somebody could block it, but there's always room to get around. There's not, the traffic back there is not going fast at all.
Yeah. I mean, just a concern that I hadn't thought of until Nancy said that. This morning said it.
All right, Brittany Rutherford.
My name is Brittany Rutherford. I'm a downtown property owner, downtown property investor, and I also live downtown and I have my office downtown. So basically, my whole life is downtown. First, I wanted to say I've been communicating with Sally Morgan for probably the last 8 months on this diagonal parking idea. And I know she's not here anymore, but I wanted to say thank you to her for all of her hard work and effort, as well as Mr. McCullough's work and effort putting this together and organizing it. I think I speak on behalf of myself, my tenants. Justin is also one of my tenants. I also own buildings on the old Java J's building, and so I think I speak on behalf of a tenant that we have signed in for that commercial space that will be running a business, as well as the lofts that we are putting, our future tenants for the lofts that we're putting upstairs, that I think this is a great idea. I think will bring nothing but positive things to downtown. I also think that it will bring a lot of safety issues. Again, as someone that my whole life is consumed in downtown, that the Lee Street and State Street, I see a lot of safety issues with the way it is right now. Lee Street is the only street downtown, side street, that is a two-way street currently. I don't know if you've ever noticed that, but every other side street downtown is one way except for Lee Street. And with the parking lot, not the Believe in Bristol, but the Birthplace of Country Music, that parking lot with State Street and Lee Street, and it's kind of a mess. And so I think bringing that down to a one-way street will be a safety, address a lot of safety issues. I know a lot of people have been pushing for a parking garage, but I think that this diagonal parking is a much easier and financially feasible solution, at least for the time being. And again, I think it addresses a lot of safety issues for pedestrians and for vehicles. And in closing, I just want to say that I am in full support of this, and I hope to see this happen. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Looking for a motion and a second to take action on this.
Just to clarify, if we make the motion, to take action, what does that let you do, Mr. McCullough?
We're just going to proceed with the design and to finalize it, and then we will apply.
Turn your mic on there. Okay.
So we would go ahead and start the design. We would go ahead and stripe out the stuff we can stripe out, and then apply for the CBDG, or see if the CBDG funding works so that we can do the other improvements on that.
Okay, so basically, anything that didn't have a material cost to it right now, because that would be part of the budget process. We
Yes.
would know where that is, the cost and but you have to do the design to come up with the
To
cost
finalize
estimate.
the cost, we really need to finalize the design, that's correct.
Okay, well then, I'm more than happy to make a motion to proceed.
Second.
All right, so motion from the Vice Mayor and second from Mr. Farnum. Please call the roll.
Farnum.
Yes.
Mumpower.
Yes.
Wingard.
Yes.
Hartley.
Yes.
Osborne.
Yes. Item 7 is sale of city-owned property. Staff report.
Council, as previously mentioned in the public hearing earlier tonight, we have received an offer from Two Cities LLC of $24,000 for the parking lot, which is located adjacent to Studio Brew. They would provide a permanent easement to the city to provide for parking lot access off of Moore Street into the parking lot at the school board office for ingress and egress. As I've previously stated, this has been previously advertised, and this offer, well, I'll just stop there.
All right. Nobody's signed up for public comment, so I'll move to the reading of the resolution, which I've been told I have the only copy, so I will be reading the resolution. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Bristol, Virginia, authorizing the sale of city-owned property at 522 Scott Street. Whereas the city owns a parcel of property known as 522 Scott Street, tax parcel ID 27102, parking lot. And whereas an offer was submitted for the purchase of the parking lot located at the above referenced property for $24,000. And whereas the City Council held a public hearing on the offer received on March 10th, 2020 as required, now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of Bristol, Virginia, that the offer received on 522 Scott Street, tax parcel ID 27-10-2 parking lot, will be accepted as presented, passed, and adopted by the City Council of the City of Bristol, Virginia, at a regularly scheduled meeting of said council held on March 10th, 2020. Looking for a motion and a second to take action on this.
I move to approve.
Second. Second.
So motion from Mr. Farnum and second from Mr. Hartley. Is there any discussion?
So this is just the parking lot, it's none of the grassy area there along the creek bed?
No, it follows the outline
pavement,
of the pavement.
Okay.
I think there should be a
Yeah.
drawing attached.
Well, that's what it looked like in
Yeah.
the drawing. I just wanted to make sure that it's just, it's
All right, if there's no further discussion, I'm going to ask that the clerk call the roll.
Farnum.
Yes.
Mumpower.
Yes.
Wingard.
No.
Hartley.
yes.
Osborne.
Yes. On to the consent agenda. Looking for a motion and a second to accept.
We approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion from the Vice Mayor and second from Mr. Farnum. Please call the roll.
Farnum.
Yes.
Mumpower.
Yes.
Wingard.
Yes.
Hartley.
Yes.
Osborne.
Yes, we stand adjourned.